Blade hit the door like it was made of paper. The cheap motel room behind it was dark. The curtains were shut. The air smelled wrong. Old sweat. Old smoke. And under it all, blood that had been sitting too long. He did not step in like a cop. He stepped in like a hunter. Two shapes moved inside. Fast. Hungry. Blade's eyes adjusted in a blink. He saw them clearly. Vampires. Not the kind that tried to look rich and polite. These looked like they were failing at pretending to be human. Their skin was too pale. Their mouths opened too wide. Their teeth flashed like knives. They rushed him together. Blade moved first. He slid to the side, low and smooth, and one vampire slammed into the doorframe. Blade's left hand snapped up. A short blade caught the vampire under the jaw. He turned the wrist. Hard. The vampire dropped like a sack. The second vampire swung a broken bottle. Blade caught its wrist mid-swing, like grabbing a child's arm. He squeezed. Bones cracked. The bottle fell. Blade twisted the vampire's arm behind its back and shoved it face first into the wall. Plaster broke. The vampire hissed and tried to bite over its shoulder. Blade did not flinch. He drove a silver-edged weapon in, fast. Final. Silence filled the room again. Blade stood still and listened. No heartbeats besides his. No extra footsteps. No hidden breath in the bathroom. He walked in. The room was not just a room, it was a nest. Blood stains in the carpet. A cooler with duct tape. A pile of clothes that didn't match. Phones. Wallets. Things taken from people who never walked out. Blade's jaw tightened. He moved toward the back wall. That was where the smell came from. A circle was drawn on the floor. Not chalk. Not paint. Something darker. Thick. Sticky. It glimmered in the low light like it was still wet. Blood. Blade crouched and ran a gloved finger near the edge without touching it. He saw symbols cut into the floorboards, too. Old marks. Not vampire marks. Not any magic he had seen in his world. His eyes narrowed. This was not a feeding place. This was a working place. He stood and scanned the room again. In the corner, there was a woman tied to a chair. Alive. Barely. Her eyes were open, but she looked like she was trying not to see. Blade crossed the room in 3 steps and cut her free. "Can you walk?" he asked. Her lips trembled. "I." A sound came from the circle, a low hum, like a power line far away. Blade turned. The blood circle began to shine, not with light like fire, with a flat, cold glow that made shadows look wrong. Blade reached for his sidearm. The air above the circle bent. It looked like the world was folding, like someone was pushing on a window from the other side. Blade took 1 step back. Then the circle grabbed him. It was not a hand. It was a pull, a hard yank inside his bones. His boots scraped wood, his muscles locked. Blade fought it anyway. His teeth clenched, his shoulders rose, his feet dug in. But the pull was not strength you could punch. The glow surged. The room snapped away. For a moment he saw something else, a hallway that was not this motel. A long road at night. A face he almost recognized, smiling like it knew a secret. Then everything slammed into black. Blade landed hard on concrete. He rolled once, silent, controlled, and came up on one knee with his gun aimed. The place smelled like dust and old oil. A basement. No windows. One flickering bulb. A workbench. A stack of boxes. And bodies. Vampire bodies. Fresh. Blade's eyes flicked over them. The cuts were messy. Not his work. These vampires had been hacked and burned. Half planned. Half panicked. He heard a creak above. Footsteps on wood. 2 sets. Quick. Alert. A door upstairs opened. Light spilled down the stairs. 2 men appeared at the top, both holding guns like they had held them their whole lives. One was taller, with sharp eyes and a hard-set mouth. The other looked calmer, but his focus was just as strong. They both froze when they saw Blade. So did Blade when he saw them aim at him, like he was the thing they hunted. "Don't move," the taller one barked. Blade didn't move. He just tracked them with his eyes. "Hands where I can see them," the taller one said. Blade slowly raised his left hand. His right stayed near his gun. The calmer one spoke, voice tight but steady. "What are you?" Blade looked at the bodies again, then back up at them. "The guy who cleaned up your mess," he said. The taller one's finger tightened on the trigger. "You're a vampire." Blade's stare stayed flat. "Try me." The calmer one swallowed. "Dean." Dean didn't look away. "Shut up. He's fast. Look at the bodies." Blade took one slow breath. He smelled them now. Human. Both. Sweat. Gun oil. Coffee. Hunters. Not his kind. Not his world. He felt it in his bones. Something had moved him. Not just across a city. Across rules. Blade's eyes lifted toward the ceiling, like he could see through it. "Where am I?" he asked. Dean snorted. "Yeah. Like you don't know." Blade's voice sharpened. "Answer." Dean's gun came up higher. "Or what?" Blade moved. Not to attack. Not to kill. Just to show them the truth. Dean blinked, and suddenly Blade was halfway up the stairs. Dean's gun swung toward him. Blade's hand shot out. He slapped the barrel aside and twisted Dean's wrist. Dean's gun clattered down the stairs. Dean grunted and tried to swing his elbow. Blade leaned back a hair. The elbow missed. Blade's other hand pinned Dean against the wall in a grip that felt like steel. The calmer one, Sam, raised his gun, but he hesitated. He saw the control, the restraint. Blade could have snapped Dean's neck. He didn't. Blade's eyes cut to Sam. "You shoot, I drop him. You want that?" Sam's voice was low. "No." Dean glared, breathing hard. Okay. You made your point." Blade released him and stepped back one stair, giving space but not safety. Dean rubbed his wrist, angry and rattled. "What the hell are you?" Blade didn't answer with a name. Names were leverage. He only said, "Someone pulled me here." Sam's gaze flicked down to the basement, to the bodies, to the strange ash marks on the floor. "Pulled you," Sam repeated, like the word mattered. Blade looked down the stairs again. Under the flickering bulb, he saw a faint ring on the concrete. Dark stains, symbols scratched into the floor. Not the same as the motel, but close enough to make his skin crawl. He pointed his chin at it. "That. Who did that?" Dean's eyes narrowed. "We were about to ask you the same thing." Blade stared at the circle. If this world had vampires and hunters, it had a war. And someone had just thrown a new weapon into it. Somewhere outside, above the basement, a dog began barking like it smelled a storm coming. And in the dark edges of the house, something unseen listened and smiled, like it had been waiting for this exact sound. The motel sign buzzed outside like an angry insect. Dean drove. Sam sat shotgun with his laptop open, even though there was no good signal. Blade sat in the back seat of the Impala, still as stone. Dean kept checking the rearview mirror like Blade might jump him. Blade didn't care. If Dean tried, Dean would lose. That was simple. What wasn't simple was the world. Blade watched the road through the side window. Small towns, long, dark stretches. Nothing that screamed magic. But the air felt different, like the rules were not his. Sam glanced back. "So, you gonna tell us your name?" Blade met his eyes. Calm, cold. "Blade." Dean barked a laugh. "Of course it is." "It's what people call me," Blade said. Sam nodded slowly. "Okay. Blade. I'm Sam. That's Dean." I figured, Blade said. Dean tightened his grip on the wheel. You're real chatty. Blade didn't react. He was used to people talking when they were scared. Sam kept his voice careful. You said someone pulled you here. How? Blade gave him 3 clean beats. No extra. I was hunting. Beat. I found a blood ritual. Beat. It dragged me. Dean snorted. Blood ritual. Great. Love that. Sam leaned forward. Blood ritual where? Like, what city? What state? Blade's eyes stayed on the road. Not here. Silence hit the car like a weight. Dean glanced back, then forward again, fast. Not here, he repeated. Meaning what? Blade's voice stayed even. Meaning I was not in your world. Dean's jaw worked like he was chewing anger. Okay, sure. Multiverse vampire ninja. Why not? Sam didn't laugh. His mind grabbed the idea and started testing it. Dean, Sam said, the circle in the basement wasn't ours. Dean's hands flexed on the wheel. I know that. And those vampires, Sam continued, they weren't normal either. Not just hungry. Like they were being pushed. Dean's eyes narrowed. Yeah, like someone made a call. Blade listened. He liked this one. Sam noticed patterns. Where are we going? Blade asked. Dean's voice was sharp. Bobby. Who's Bobby? Blade asked. Sam answered. He's family. Kind of. He knows a lot. If anyone can figure out what dragged you here, it's him. Blade's lips barely moved. Good. Dean muttered. Also, he's got a panic room, just in case you get snacky. Blade's eyes flicked to Dean's neck. Dean stiffened. Don't. Blade looked away like Dean bored him. If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead. Dean swallowed hard and pretended he didn't. Sam cleared his throat. So, you eat people? Blade's voice cut clean. No. Dean scoffed. That's what they all say. Blade leaned forward just enough that Dean saw him in the mirror. I'm not them, Blade said. Sam watched Blade's face. There was no lie there. Just steel. What are you then? Sam asked. Blade paused. He did not like giving away his shape, but he also knew this world ran on trust and knowledge. Hunters died without it. I'm a half-breed, Blade said. Born between human and vampire. Dean almost swerved. What? Sam's eyebrows rose. That's possible? Blade's eyes stayed dark and steady. I'm proof. Dean let out a short, bitter laugh. Of course you are. Sam looked at him like he was trying to see the math. So you have vampire abilities. Yes, Blade said. And the blood? Sam asked. Blade didn't answer right away. Dean jumped in, voice hard. He needs it. Sam's head snapped to Dean. How do you know that? Dean nodded toward Blade. Because I've been staring at him for an hour. He's too controlled. Too tight. Like a guy holding his breath. Blade's gaze sharpened for a second. Dean was not smart like Sam, but Dean had instincts. Dangerous ones. Sam looked back at Blade. Do you need it to live? Blade chose words that were true without giving a full map. I need a substitute, he said. Dean muttered. Substitute blood. Cool. Awesome. Sam tried to keep it normal. Like, hospital blood? Blade didn't smile. Sometimes. Dean's mouth twisted. Let me guess. You're also allergic to puppies. Blade ignored him. But later, when Dean stopped at a gas station and came back with a protein drink, he tossed it back into the seat without looking. Here, Dean said, in case you're craving strawberry. Blade stared at the bottle like it was an insult. Sam looked like he wanted to laugh and didn't dare. Blade set the drink down gently. If I drink that, I'm killing you first. Dean's eyes widened. Hey! Blade's voice stayed flat. Joke. Sam blinked. Was that a joke? Blade didn't answer. Dean stared forward, confused and annoyed. Okay, that's worse. Bobby Singer's place smelled like books, oil, and old coffee. It felt more real than the motel. More like a place that had survived storms. Bobby opened the door with a shotgun in his hands and suspicion on his face. His eyes took in Dean, Sam, and then Blade. Bobby didn't lower the shotgun. Dean, Bobby said, why do you have a vampire in my yard? Dean lifted his hands like he was innocent. Okay, first of all, Blade didn't move. He didn't blink. He just met Bobby's stare. Bobby's gaze was the kind that had seen too much. It didn't scare easy. Sam stepped forward. He's not a normal vampire. Bobby's eyebrows rose. That's a hell of a sentence, Dean cut in. He's fast, like stupid fast. And he's been chopping vamps like it's his day job. Blade spoke before Dean could spin it too far. It is. Bobby stared at him for a long moment. Then Bobby stepped back and nodded with his head. Inside. But if you bite me, I'm putting you down. Blade walked in like the threat didn't matter. Bobby's living room was half war room. Books stacked on chairs. Weapons on the wall. A map with pins. A radio that looked like it had been punched. Bobby pointed at a chair. Sit. Blade sat. Dean stayed standing, arms crossed, like he needed to prove he wasn't scared. Sam pulled out his notes and his laptop. Bobby set the shotgun down, close enough to grab, and went to a shelf. He grabbed a small bottle. Holy water, Bobby said. Open your mouth. Dean gave a sharp laugh. Oh, come on. Blade opened his mouth. Calm. Bobby flicked a drop inside. Blade didn't burn, didn't smoke, didn't scream. Bobby squinted. Okay. He grabbed a knife. Silver. Dean shifted. Bobby? Blade held out his hand, palm up. Bobby made a small cut. Not deep. Blade didn't flinch. No smoke. No blistering. Bobby watched the blood bead up. Dark red. Normal looking. But then he watched the cut start to close. Slow but steady. Like a film pulling itself back together. Bobby's eyes narrowed. Well, I'll be damned. Sam leaned in, excited and worried at the same time. Healing factor. Dean frowned. So what is he? Like a special kind of monster? Blade's voice stayed even. I'm not your monster. Dean snapped back. You're still a vampire. Blade's eyes cut to him. And you're still breathing, because I allow it. Sam raised a hand. Okay, guys, not helping. Bobby sat down heavy in a chair across from Blade. Tell me straight. What happened? Start to finish. Blade gave it clean, like a report. I hit a nest, he said. Found a blood ritual. Symbols I didn't know. It grabbed me. I woke up in a basement with dead vamps and 2 men pointing guns. Dean opened his mouth. Bobby lifted a finger. Not you. Dean shut it. Sam asked, the symbols, did they look like this? Sam turned his laptop around and pulled up photos from the basement circle. The one that had been under the bulb, the scratched lines, the dark ring. Blade leaned forward, his eyes tightened. Similar. Dean leaned in too. Similar how? Same idea, Blade said. Not same hand. Bobby scratched his beard. So somebody here did a summoning. But instead of pulling a demon or a spirit, they pulled you. Sam whispered. From another world? Dean pointed a finger at Sam like the word itself annoyed him. We are not saying that like it's normal. Bobby shot Dean a look. Son, you've seen angels and hellhounds. Another world ain't the craziest thing on the list, Dean muttered. It's up there. Blade stayed quiet, but he stored every word. Bobby stood and walked to a locked door. He opened it and revealed a small room with metal walls and a heavy latch. Panic room, Bobby said, just in case. Blade stood too. You planning to lock me in? Bobby didn't blink. I'm planning to be alive tomorrow. Blade stared at the room. Then he looked at Bobby again. Fair. Dean blinked. Wait, that's it? No threats? No, I'll kill you? Blade's voice was calm. You're cautious. That's smart. Dean looked offended by the compliment. Sam stepped closer to Blade. If you're not here to hurt people, why do you hunt vampires? Blade's eyes went hard for a second, like old pain hit him in the chest. Then he spoke in short beats. They kill. Beat. They spread. Beat. They hide. Beat. People die when no one stops them. Dean's expression softened just a hair, then he covered it with sarcasm. Okay, Batman. Blade stared at him. I don't know what that is. Dean almost laughed. Oh, you're gonna hate pop culture? Bobby waved a hand. All right. Enough. We got 2 questions. 1. Who did the ritual? 2. Why are vamps acting organized? Sam nodded, already typing. The dead vampires in the basement. They were fresh, but the cuts weren't clean, like someone new to hunting. Dean's eyes narrowed. Or someone trying to frame us, or frame him. Blade's head tilted. Someone wanted me found. Bobby looked between them. And you weren't followed? Blade's voice dropped. I don't get followed. Dean made a face. Sure. Blade didn't take the bait. Sam clicked through reports. There have been disappearances, 3 towns, same pattern, drained bodies, and there's something else. He turned the screen. A blurry photo from a crime scene. A symbol spray-painted near a dumpster. A crude version of the circle mark. Bobby's face tightened. That ain't vampire. Dean's voice went low. Witch. Blade's eyes narrowed. Magic. Bobby nodded once. Yeah. Magic. Sam sat back, thinking hard. If a witch did a ritual, it could be a doorway, not just a summon. Like a fishing hook in the dark. Dean snorted. And we're the fish. Blade's mouth moved like he almost smiled. Almost. Bobby caught it and grunted. Don't get used to this place, you're a guest. Blade nodded once. I don't get comfortable. Good, Bobby said, because trouble just found you. He turned up the radio. A hunter channel crackled. Static. Then a voice, tense. Bobby, you hearing this? There's a nest gone quiet, like wiped, and there's talk. About a guy. Moves like a blur. Cuts him down in daylight. Dean looked at Blade. Yeah, that'd be him. Sam swallowed. People are going to come looking. Bobby's eyes stayed hard. And not all of them will be friendly. Blade's gaze didn't change. Let them. Bobby pointed a finger at him. Don't say that like you're excited. Blade's voice stayed cold. I'm not excited. I'm ready. Dean muttered. Same thing. Sam leaned forward. We need to track the ritual source. If we stop whoever is drawing those circles, we stop more things from slipping through. Or being pulled. Blade's eyes sharpened. That word mattered. Pulled. What else can it pull? Blade asked. Bobby's face went grim. Demons. Spirits. Maybe worse, Dean added. Or it can open doors you don't want open. Blade stood. Then we close it. Dean looked up. Whoa, you don't get to just... Blade's eyes locked on him. You want to argue, do it later. People are dying. Sam stepped between them, calm but firm. We go together. We do it the right way. Dean, we need his help. Dean's jaw worked. He didn't like it, but he knew Sam was right. Bobby sighed. Fine. But we do this on our turf. My rules. Blade nodded once. Your rules. Until they get people killed. Dean threw his hands up. Great. We got a vampire with opinions. Blade looked at him. Half. Dean stared. That is not better. They hit the road again that night. Dean drove like the car was part of his body. Sam read maps and police chatter. Bobby stayed back to dig through lore and call Hunter contacts. Blade sat in the back seat again. This time there was a small cooler near his feet. Dean had shoved it back there with a grumble. "Don't open it till we stop," Dean said. "And if you start getting weird, I'm pulling over and Sam gets the holy water super soaker." Sam sighed. "We don't have a holy water super soaker," Dean said. "Not yet." Blade didn't touch the cooler, but his eyes flicked to it once. Quick, like a reflex. Sam noticed anyway. Sam lowered his voice. "So, what's in the cooler?" Dean answered without looking back. "Hospital blood." Blade's eyes narrowed. "You stole it," Dean snapped. "Borrowed." Sam rubbed his forehead. Dean cut him off. "Sam, listen. He needs it. Either we give him this, or he finds his own." Blade's voice was flat. "I don't feed on people." Dean scoffed. "Yeah, okay." Blade leaned forward, voice low. "I have rules. Even when I'm starving." Dean went quiet. For a long stretch, the only sound was the road. Then Dean muttered, "Fine. Rules. Great. Love rules. Just keep your rules away from my neck." Blade sat back. "Keep your neck out of my face." Sam almost laughed. He swallowed it. He felt something he didn't expect. Relief. The first lead took them to a small town with one main street and too many missing posters. The kind of place where people looked out their windows and didn't open doors after dark. Sam stood outside a sheriff's office with a fake badge ready. Dean adjusted his jacket. Blade stayed a step back, hood up, sunglasses on even at night. Dean glanced at him. "You're really committing to the whole mysterious thing." Blade's voice was quiet. "I don't do crowds." Sam looked around. "We need information. If there's a witch or a cult, it'll leave marks. Unusual deaths, strange symbols." Dean nodded. "And vamps." Blade's head angled toward the tree line at the edge of town. "They're close." Dean's eyes sharpened. "You smell them?" Blade nodded once. 2, maybe 3. Watching. Sam's stomach tightened. "They know we're here." Dean's hand went to his gun. "Or they know you're here." Blade didn't deny it. They worked fast. Sam and Dean went inside, flashed badges, asked questions. Blade stayed outside, moving around the building like a shadow. He saw a man at the corner of the street pretending to smoke. No smoke came out. He watched too hard. Blade crossed the sidewalk in a blink and grabbed him by the collar, pulling him into an alley. The man's face shifted, teeth lengthened, eyes went yellow. Blade slammed him into the brick wall. "Who sent you?" Blade asked. The vampire hissed. "The first." Blade tightened his grip. "Say the name." The vampire's lips peeled back. "The Alpha." Blade's eyes narrowed. In his world, Alpha was a word people used to feel big. But here, it sounded like a title that mattered. The vampire tried to spit blood in Blade's face. Blade turned his head slightly and let it miss. Then, he drove his fist into the vampire's gut. The vampire folded. Blade leaned in. "What does he want?" The vampire laughed, wet and ugly. "He wants you, daylight freak." Blade's grip stayed steady. "Why?" The vampire's eyes gleamed like it enjoyed the answer. "Because you shouldn't exist." Blade's jaw tightened. He ended it quick, clean. No speech, no cruelty. Then he dragged the body into the shadows and wiped his hands. When he stepped back onto the street, Dean was already watching him from the sheriff's office door. Dean's eyes were narrow, but there was something else under it. Fear. Not of Blade attacking him. Fear of what was big enough to chase Blade. Sam came out next, holding a folder. 2 bodies found last week, drained. Not torn up, like, careful. Dean looked at Blade. So they're evolving. Blade's voice was low. Or being trained. Sam swallowed. By the Alpha? Blade nodded. He's real. Dean's mouth tightened. Okay. So we got a vampire boss. Great. Can we just shoot him? Blade stared at him like Dean was a child. If it was that simple, I wouldn't be here. Dean bristled. Hey, Sam stepped in. We need to find where they're taking people, and we need to find the ritual maker, if demons are involved. Dean finished. Then this gets worse. Blade's eyes moved across town again. He heard a distant laugh, a car door, a heartbeat quick with fear. Then he heard something else, a low pulse under the night, like the circle in the basement. Magic is close, Blade said. Dean muttered, Of course it is. Sam's eyes widened. You can sense that? Blade nodded once. It feels wrong. Dean pointed down the street. There's an old church outside town. Locals said they've seen lights there at night. Like candles. Sam's voice tightened. Which? Blade started walking. Dean jogged to keep up. You're just gonna charge in? Blade didn't look back. I'm going to stop people from dying. Sam moved with them, faster now. We do it smart. Dean, plan. Dean's mind kicked in. The fear turned into focus. All right, Dean said. Salt, holy water, iron. We set a perimeter. Sammy, you get the exorcism ready. Blade. Blade's head tilted. Dean hesitated for half a second, then said it anyway. You do what you do. Just don't get us killed. Blade's voice was flat. Stay behind me, and you won't. Dean frowned. That's not. Sam cut in. Good. We'll take whatever safety we can get. The church sat on a hill like it was trying to get away from the town. It was old, half rotted. The windows were boarded. The yard was full of dead grass. But inside there was light. Candlelight. Dean and Sam moved first, guns up. Blade flowed behind them, silent. He didn't need light to see. The dark was not a problem for him. It was home. The front door creaked open. The smell hit them. Blood. Fresh. Sam's breath caught. Oh no. They stepped in. There were symbols painted on the floor in dark red. Not just one circle. Many. Smaller circles connected by lines, like a map. In the center, a young man knelt, shaking, holding a knife over his own palm. A woman stood above him in a long coat, hair tied back, eyes sharp and bright. A witch. Dean's gun lifted. Lady, step away from the kid. The witch smiled like she had been waiting. Hunters. And something else. Her eyes slid to Blade. They widened just a fraction. Not fear. Interest. Blade's hand went to his sword. The witch raised her free hand. Easy. I'm not your enemy. Dean barked a laugh. Yeah, we've heard that one. The witch's smile stayed calm. I didn't summon him. Blade's voice cut in, cold. But you know who did. The witch looked at Blade's sunglasses, then at his mouth, like she was putting pieces together. You're the daylight one. Dean's head snapped. How do you know that? The witch's eyes flicked to Dean like he was slow. Everyone knows that now. Sam stepped closer, careful. Who did the ritual in the basement? The witch's smile faded. Someone trying to impress the wrong people. Dean's voice went sharp. Demons. The witch didn't deny it. Blade took one step forward. The witch raised a finger. If you come closer, the boy dies. Blade stopped. Sam's stomach dropped. Dean's face twisted with anger. You touch him and I... The witch shook her head. No threats. Not tonight. Blade's voice was flat. Tell us what you know. The witch's eyes stayed on him. A vampire came to me. Not one of the usual ones. Old. Powerful. He wanted a door. Dean's jaw tightened. The Alpha. The witch nodded once. He wants the daylight hunter. Blade's hands curled slowly. Controlled. Tight. The witch continued. He wants you because you break the order. You make the rest of them look weak." Dean scoffed. "They are weak." Blade didn't look at him. "Where is he?" The witch tilted her head. "If I tell you, demons kill me. If I don't, vampires kill me." Sam tried another way. "Help us stop the door magic. It's dangerous." The witch's eyes flicked to Sam. "You think I don't know?" She sighed like she was tired. "Doors don't open for free. They twist, they bring things that don't belong." Blade's voice stayed steady. "Then close it." The witch looked at him, and for a second, there was respect. Then her gaze hardened again. "I can't," she said. "Not alone. And not with him watching." Dean tensed. "Who's watching?" The candles flickered. The air went cold. A deep laugh rolled through the church, not from any throat. Sam's skin prickled. Dean whispered, "Demon." Blade's head snapped toward the back wall. A shadow moved there, tall and thin. Not a body, not a person, a presence. It leaned in like it wanted to taste the room, and it looked right at Blade. Blade didn't show fear. He just raised his gun and aimed at the place where a head would be. Dean hissed, "That won't—" The shadow spoke, voice smooth as oil. "There you are." Blade's eyes narrowed. "Show yourself." The shadow laughed again. "Oh, I'm not here to fight. Not yet. I just wanted to see the rumor." Sam's mouth went dry. "Who are you?" The shadow ignored him. Its focus stayed on Blade. "You don't belong in this world, Daywalker." Dean's eyes widened. "Daywalker?" Blade didn't answer. The demon voice purred. "But you could be useful." Blade's voice was low. "I don't work for demons." The shadow chuckled. "Nobody does. Not on purpose." Dean snapped, "Get out!" The shadow leaned closer, and the air got colder. "You can't order me." Blade fired. The shot cracked loud in the church. The muzzle flash lit the old walls. The bullet hit nothing. The shadow rippled like smoke and then snapped away to the ceiling, laughing, then vanished. The candle steadied again. Silence fell hard. Dean lowered his gun slowly, breathing fast. Okay, that's bad." Sam looked at Blade. "They know what you are." Blade's jaw tightened. "Let them know." The witch swallowed, shaken now. "He'll come." Blade turned to her. "Good." Dean snapped. "No, not good." Blade's gaze didn't move. "Better to face the head than chase the hands." Sam looked at the circles on the floor. "These are routes, paths. Like they're moving people." The witch nodded slowly, voice small. "He's building a network. He's training them. He's changing how they hunt." Dean's face went grim. "He's making an army." Blade's voice stayed flat. "Then we cut it down." The witch looked between them. "You can't. Not fast enough." Blade stepped closer, just enough to make her flinch. "Tell me where he is." The witch hesitated. Then she whispered, "There's an old meatpacking plant outside the next town. Closed years ago. No one goes there. Too many disappearances." Dean muttered, "Of course it's a meat plant." Sam asked, "Why there?" The witch's eyes flicked away. "It has space, cold storage, and tunnels under it." Blade's grip tightened on his weapon. Cold storage. Blood supply. Dean noticed the flicker in Blade's eyes and frowned. "Is that a thing for you?" Dean asked. Blade didn't answer. Sam's voice was careful. "We go now. Before they move." The witch stepped back, clutching her coat tighter. "If you go, he'll know. He's already waiting." Dean looked at Blade. "Maybe that's what he wants. You walk in, he traps you, uses you." Blade's voice was calm. "I don't get trapped." Dean snapped. "Everybody gets trapped." Sam lifted his hands. "We plan. We do it together." Blade stared at the ritual lines one more time, then turned toward the door. "Then plan on the way," Blade said. Dean stared at his back, annoyed and scared at the same time. Sam looked at Dean. He's right. People are dying. Dean's shoulders sagged. Fine, Dean said. But we do it smart. Salt, fire, dead man's blood, and you— he pointed at Blade. You drink your ketchup before we go. Blade paused. Dean's mouth twisted. What? I'm trying to keep you from going full snack mode in a vampire factory. Sam stared, horrified. Dean! Blade turned his head slightly. For the first time, his voice held the smallest hint of humor. It's not ketchup, he said. Dean blinked. Okay, great. Progress. They walked out into the night. Behind them, the witch stared at the circles, trembling. Somewhere far away, something ancient and hungry lifted its head. And in the dark, the alpha vampire began to move his pieces, smiling like he had finally found a worthy problem. The meat-packing plant was a black block against the sky. No lights, no cars, no guards. That alone made Dean's stomach twist. Too easy, Dean whispered, stepping out of the Impala. Sam adjusted the bag of supplies over his shoulder. Or it's a trap. Blade stood still and listened. He heard it. Not just vampires. People. Heartbeats. Many. Trapped. You brought civilians, Blade said, voice hard. Dean froze. What? Blade started walking toward the building. He's feeding. And he's testing. Sam rushed after him. How many? Blade's jaw clenched. More than 10. Dean swore under his breath and ran to catch up. Okay. New rule, no charging. Blade hit the side door and ripped it open like it was thin metal. Dean stared. Dude! Inside, the air was cold. Old machines sat like dead animals. Hooks hung from rails in the ceiling. The floor was slick in places. Sam's eyes darted. This is— Blade's hand lifted. Quiet! A sound came from ahead. A scream cut off. Blade moved. He shot forward down the hall, faster than Dean and Sam could follow. His boots hit the ground so light it barely made sound. Dean cursed and sprinted after him, gun up. Sam followed, chanting under his breath, like he was preparing his mind for whatever was next. They rounded a corner into a huge open room, and the world went still for one sharp second. There were people in cages along the far wall, men and women, some crying, some too weak to move. Vampires stood in a loose line in the center of the room, like soldiers waiting for orders. And at the front of them, all stood one vampire who didn't look hungry. He looked calm. He looked in control. He smiled at Blade like Blade was late. Daywalker, the alpha vampire said. Dean's mouth went dry. Okay, that's the alpha. Sam swallowed, eyes wide. He talks. Blade's voice was low. Of course he talks. The alpha stepped forward one pace. He moved like a predator that knew it owned the room. You're faster than my scouts said, the alpha said, and you smell wrong. Blade's gun rose. Let them go! The alpha's smile widened. No! Dean shouted. Hey, Fangface, look at me! The alpha didn't even glance at him. That made Dean angrier than any insult. Sam's hands tightened around a small bottle of holy water and a knife. He kept his voice steady. Why bring us here? The alpha finally looked at Sam. His eyes were old. Not human. Old. Something deeper. Because you brought him, the alpha said. Then he looked back at Blade. And because I wanted to see if the stories were true. Blade's eyes narrowed. You're wasting time. The alpha lifted a hand. 2 vampires yanked a cage door open and dragged a little girl forward. She was maybe 8. Her face was wet with tears. She shook so hard she could barely stand. Dean's heart slammed. No! Sam's voice cracked. Let her go. The alpha's tone stayed calm. Make me. Blade didn't blink, but inside him, something tightened like a wire. This was the part he hated most. Monsters using people like shields. He had seen it 100 times. Never got easier. Blade spoke, voice like ice. If she dies, you die slow. The Alpha laughed softly. Threats. Cute. Then the Alpha nodded again. The vampire holding the girl lifted her chin, exposing her neck. Dean raised his gun and fired. The shot hit the vampire's head. The vampire flinched, but didn't go down. It turned, snarling, still holding the girl. Dean's eyes went wide. "What?" Sam yelled. "Dean! Dead man's blood!" Dean reached for the flask at his belt. Blade moved. He crossed the space in a blur. 1 second, he was near Sam. The next, he was right in front of the vampire holding the girl. He chopped down with his sword. Clean. The vampire's arm came off at the elbow. The girl dropped and stumbled back, screaming. Blade caught her and pushed her behind him without looking. "Run to the door," Blade told her. "Don't stop." She ran. Dean stared like his brain couldn't keep up. Sam whispered, "Oh my God." The Alpha's smile faded. Not fear. Interest turning sharper. "So fast," the Alpha said. "So controlled." Blade didn't answer. He attacked. The next moments were not a brawl. They were a storm. Blade moved through the line of vampires like a blade through paper. He used UV grenades that flashed bright and made vampires scream and recoil. He fired silver rounds into knees and shoulders to drop them without wasting time. He used his sword when it was cleanest. Dean and Sam jumped in where they could. Dean threw a line of salt across the floor and lit it with a quick burst of fire, cutting off part of the room. He shot at vampires that tried to slip around Blade. He yelled at civilians to crawl to safety. Sam ran to the cages, hands shaking but steady enough. He picked locks with a tool Dean tossed him. He shoved holy water into hands. "Splash it if they get close," he told them, voice fierce. The Alpha didn't rush. He watched. Then he moved. He was faster than the other vampires. Not as fast as Blade, but close enough that it mattered. The Alpha lunged for Blade's side. Blade twisted and caught the Alpha's wrist mid-swipe. The impact boomed like a hammer hit metal. Dean felt it in his chest from across the room. Blade and the Alpha grappled for 1 second. Blade's eyes stayed cold. The Alpha's eyes stayed amused. Then the Alpha shifted his weight and used the cages as cover, pulling back, dragging Blade toward the prisoners like a cruel lesson. Blade yanked him back instead. The Alpha's feet slid on the floor, but he didn't fall. He smiled wider, like this was fun. "You're strong," the Alpha said. Blade's voice stayed flat. "You're loud." The Alpha snapped his head toward the cages. A vampire near the far wall grabbed a man and yanked him forward, teeth bared. Dean shouted, "Hey!" Sam froze, torn between the lock in his hands and the person about to die. Blade's grip tightened on the Alpha's wrist. He understood the move. Distract him. Split him. Make him choose. Blade made his choice without hesitation. He drove his knee into the Alpha's ribs, hard enough to crack bone, then shoved the Alpha backward and launched himself across the room. He hit the vampire at the cages before it could bite. Blade smashed it into the bars, then pinned it and ended it fast. The man dropped, gasping. Dean dragged him away, yelling, "Move! Go!" The Alpha rolled to his feet, ribs already setting back into place. He touched his side like he was checking a bruise. Then he looked pleased. "You chose the human," the Alpha said, loud enough for all of them to hear. "That's your weakness." Blade turned, eyes hard. "That's my job." The Alpha's grin flashed teeth. "Then do your job. Save them all." He snapped his fingers. A door at the back of the room opened. More vampires came in, but these were different. They wore coats, thick ones, with weird shiny strips sewn in, like crude armor. UV shielding, Blade realized. They had learned. Dean's stomach dropped. "They're adapting," Sam whispered. "How fast can they do that?" Blade's voice was low. Fast enough. The new vampires moved toward the cages, not Blade. They moved like they had orders. Blade launched forward again, but the Alpha stepped into his path. This time, the Alpha didn't play. He met Blade head-on. They collided. Blade drove the Alpha through a hanging rack of hooks. Metal chains snapped. Hooks swung. The Alpha twisted midair and landed on his feet like a cat. Blade followed, relentless. He attacked with speed and angles that made it hard for the Alpha to read him. He punched the Alpha's throat. The Alpha barely staggered. Blade kicked the Alpha's knee. The Alpha used the momentum to spin and rake claws across Blade's jacket. The fabric shredded. Blade's skin healed under it. Dean watched and felt small. This wasn't like fighting a normal vampire. This was like watching two storms crash. Dean fired at a vampire near the cages. The vampire flinched and kept coming. Dean pulled the dead man's blood flask and splashed it across the floor. The vampire hit the line and jerked back like it ran into a wall. Dean shouted, "Dead man's blood works! Keep them off the cages!" Sam nodded, breath fast. He took the flask and started making quick lines on the ground, like barriers. Messy, but effective. Blade saw it and adjusted. He drove the Alpha toward those lines. He forced the Alpha to move where Sam and Dean wanted him to move. The Alpha realized too late. He stepped back, straight into a dead man's bloodline. His body jerked, his face twisted in anger for the first time. Blade didn't waste it. He slammed the Alpha into the floor and pinned him. Sword at his throat. Dean's eyes widened. "We got him," Sam breathed. "Blade!" Blade's grip was steady. His blade didn't shake. The Alpha stared up at him, eyes burning. "Do it," Dean shouted. "Cut his head off!" Blade's eyes flicked toward the cages. A vampire had slipped through while they focused on the Alpha. It grabbed a woman and dragged her toward the back door. Blade's jaw tightened. The Alpha smiled, even pinned. "Save her." Blade could end the Alpha right now. He knew it. He also knew what would happen if the woman died. Blade moved. He yanked his sword away, shot across the room, and took the vampire down before it reached the door. The woman stumbled and ran. Dean yelled, furious. "Blade, what are you doing?" Blade turned back, and the Alpha was gone. He had used the 1 second to roll, tear through the dead man's bloodline by force, and dive into a side tunnel under a machine. Dean slammed his fist into a metal rail. "No!" Sam's face fell. He escaped. Blade stared at the tunnel entrance, eyes cold and focused. He could chase. He could catch. Maybe. But chasing into tunnels meant leaving civilians behind, leaving Dean and Sam with an army. Blade made the same choice again. He turned away from the tunnel. "Get them out," Blade said. Dean's voice shook with anger. "He was right there." Blade's voice didn't rise. "And people are right here." Sam swallowed hard and nodded. "Dean, we finished the rescue." Dean's hands trembled on his gun. Then he forced himself to breathe. "Fine," Dean growled. "We clear the room. We torch the place. We don't leave bodies for them to use." Blade moved to the cages and ripped doors open with raw strength when locks wouldn't budge. Civilians spilled out, crying, stumbling, clutching each other. One man grabbed Dean's arm. "What is happening?" Dean forced a rough smile. "You're gonna be okay. Just run. Don't stop till you hit the road." Sam guided people toward the exit, voice steady, eyes bright with fear and focus. Blade stood by the door like a wall, cutting down any vampire that got too close. When it was done, the room was full of smoke, ash, and silence. Dean lit the last trail of fuel and watched flames climb the old walls. As they backed out into the night, Dean stared at Blade like he wanted to blame him for everything. You let him go, Dean said. Blade didn't look at him. I didn't let him. I chose. Dean's voice cracked. That choice is gonna get us killed. Blade finally looked at Dean. His eyes were hard, but not cruel. That choice is why you're still human, Blade said. Sam stepped between them, breath fogging in the cold air. He's right, Dean. We saved them. Dean swallowed, still shaking. Yeah, Dean said, voice low. But now everybody knows you're real. Blade's gaze went back to the burning building. In the dark, beyond the flames, the trees stood still. Somewhere out there, the Alpha was moving through tunnels, smiling, learning. And somewhere else, something that wasn't a vampire listened to the reports and started making plans with a different kind of hunger. Blade adjusted his torn coat and stood taller. He didn't look impressed. He looked ready, because now the war had a face, and it had just looked straight at him. The fire at the plant burned until the sky started to turn gray. Dean drove with his jaw locked. The Impala smelled like smoke, sweat, and fear that nobody wanted to admit. Sam sat with his laptop closed for once, staring out the window like he was trying to see the plan hidden in the trees. Blade sat in the back, still as ever, his coat torn at the shoulder. Under the tear, his skin was already smooth again. Dean kept glancing at the rearview mirror. Blade didn't look back. He watched the road. You could have ended him, Dean said at last. Blade's voice was quiet. I could have. Dean's grip tightened. And you didn't. Blade didn't argue. I chose the people. Sam leaned forward a little. We saved them. Dean shot him a look. Yeah, and now the Alpha knows exactly what we do. He knows we'll pick civilians every time. Blade's head tilted. He already knew that. He tested it. Dean's mouth twisted. Well, congratulations. He passed. Silence again. Then Sam asked the question that was sitting in the car like a loaded gun. Blade, when you said you don't feed on people, what happens if you can't get your substitute? Blade's eyes stayed on the dark fields outside. Then I suffer. Dean snorted. That's not an answer. Blade's voice didn't change. It is. Sam pushed gently. Do you lose control? Blade didn't answer right away. The pause was small, but Dean noticed it. Blade finally said, I get angry. Dean let out a short laugh with no humor. Great. Blade's tone stayed flat. I don't get stupid. Dean looked like he wanted to argue, but his throat worked like he swallowed it. Sam nodded, holding on to that. Okay. Angry, but not stupid. That matters. Dean muttered. It matters until it doesn't. Blade's gaze slid to Dean in the mirror. You're scared. Dean's eyes flashed. No kidding. Blade didn't press. He understood fear. He lived with it. He just refused to let it run the wheel. The Impala turned onto a dirt road. Bobby's salvage yard came into view. Piles of metal, old cars, fences. A house that looked like it had survived too many fights because it refused to lay down. Bobby was waiting on the porch with a mug in his hand and a shotgun leaning against the wall like a reminder. When they got out, Dean tried to speak first. Bobby cut him off. I heard. Dean blinked. Heard what? Bobby pointed at Blade. I heard there's a daylight killer burning through nests like a damn tornado. Dean rubbed his face. Okay, first. Bobby pointed again, this time at Dean. Second. I heard half the Hunter Network is talking about you boys, like you grew a third head. Sam's stomach tightened. That fast? Bobby gave him a look. Son, hunters don't got much entertainment. You give them a new rumor and they chew it till it bleeds. Blade stepped forward. Then your network is a problem. Bobby's eyes narrowed. My network kept you alive for 10 minutes in this world. Blade didn't flinch. Your network will get people killed if they come for me. Dean threw his hands up. See? This is what I'm talking about. He's got the whole I work alone thing. Blade looked at Dean like he was tired. You do too. You just pretend you don't. Dean opened his mouth, then shut it. Bobby sighed like his bones were heavier than his anger. Inside. We talk. We plan. They went in. Bobby's kitchen table was already covered. Papers. Maps. Polaroids. Symbols drawn by hand. A bag of salt. A lighter. A stack of cheap plastic cups. Dean sat hard in a chair. Sam pulled his laptop out again like breathing. Blade stood near the wall because sitting felt like letting someone behind him. Bobby slid a small cooler onto the table. Dean's eyes flicked to it. Oh, come on, Bobby grunted. Hospital blood. I got a contact. Don't ask. Dean looked at Blade like he was annoyed that this was even real. Drink it. Now, before you get cranky. Blade stared at the cooler. Sam watched him closely, like he was watching a person walk along the edge of a cliff. Blade popped the latch. Inside were sealed bags, cold and dark. He took one. Quick. No drama. He used a small tool from his pocket, like he'd done it 1,000 times. He drank without ceremony. Dean made a face. Man, I'm never eating ketchup again. Blade lowered the bag and looked at him. It's not ketchup, Dean shrugged. It is in my head now. Sam's shoulders eased a little when Blade finished and set the empty bag down like it was just another piece of gear. Bobby watched it all with a tight mouth. Then he tapped the papers on the table. All right, Bobby said. We got an alpha vampire building something, and we got witches drawing doors. Dean leaned forward. The witch at the church said the meat plant had tunnels. He used them. He got away. Bobby nodded. That's what he does. Old vamps don't survive by being dumb. Sam pulled up a map. There's a pattern. The missing people. The blood theft. The symbols. It forms a route. Blade stepped closer to the map. A supply line. Sam nodded. Yes. Like he's moving resources. Dean stared at the pins on the map. He's not just feeding. Blade's voice stayed cold. He's building. Bobby looked at Blade. And you showed up right when he decided to level up. Dean grimaced. So what? This is our fault now. Bobby's eyes were sharp. In this line of work, it's always your fault, even when it ain't. Sam swallowed. Bobby, what are hunters saying? Bobby leaned back. Some say you boys got lucky. Some say you're liars. Some say you're cursed. Dean muttered. We are cursed. Bobby ignored him. And some think your new friend is a problem that needs to be put down. Sam's eyes flashed. No. Dean's face tightened, but he didn't say no. Not yet. He didn't want to admit it, but the thought lived in him like a splinter. Blade spoke calmly. They're right to be cautious. Sam stared at him. You're okay with that? Blade's eyes didn't move. I don't need approval. I need results. Dean scoffed. Yeah, see? That's the thing. You talk like a weapon. Blade looked at Dean. I am a weapon. Sam shook his head. You're a person. Blade's mouth tightened. For a second, old anger flickered behind his eyes. Then it was gone. Bobby cleared his throat. We got another issue. Dean looked up. What? Bobby slid a photo across the table. A grainy picture. A symbol painted on a wall. But this time, it wasn't just a circle. It was a circle with marks like hooks and a line that split down the middle. Sam's face went pale. That's not a normal witch mark. Dean swallowed. That's demon work. Blade leaned in. Explain. Bobby nodded toward Sam. College boy. You do it. Sam forced his voice steady. Some demons don't just possess people. They also mark places. It's like a tag, like a claim. Blade's eyes narrowed. So demons want the door too? Dean snorted. Demons want everything. That's their whole brand. Bobby grunted. And if demons are sniffing around this alpha, it means they think they can use him. Sam rubbed his forehead. Or use Blade. Dean's gaze flicked to Blade. Yeah, that. Blade didn't deny it. Let them try. Dean slammed his hand on the table. Stop saying that like it's easy. Blade's voice rose just a fraction. Not loud, just sharper. It is easy for me. Dean flinched, then got mad that he flinched. Okay, yeah, you're tough. Great. You're also new here. Blade's eyes stayed on him. So teach me. Dean blinked. What? Blade said it again. Teach me your demons. Your rules. Your weaknesses. Sam watched Dean's face change. The anger didn't disappear, but it shifted. Dean understood that. A soldier asking for intel, not a monster asking for mercy. Bobby nodded once. That's the smartest thing you've said all day. Dean muttered, I hate all of you. But he grabbed a notebook anyway. They worked for hours. They mapped towns. They circled symbols. They listed tools. Salt. Iron. Holy water. Dead man's blood. Fire. Symbols that meant trap. Symbols that meant door. Blade listened. He didn't argue about methods unless they were sloppy. He didn't brag. He didn't joke. He just took in information like it was ammo. Sam watched him and felt something he couldn't name. Blade didn't feel like a guest. Blade felt like someone who had been at war so long, peace felt like a lie. When the sun was up, Dean finally stood and stretched. I'm gonna take a shower, a long shower, like bleach level. Bobby pointed a finger. Don't use my good soap. Dean grumbled and walked off. Sam stayed at the table with Blade. For a moment, it was quiet. Just the hum of the fridge and the faint clink of Bobby's mug. Sam spoke softly. Do you ever stop? Blade's eyes stayed on the map. No. Sam swallowed. Doesn't that get lonely? Blade's jaw set. Lonely gets people killed. Sam wanted to argue, but he didn't. He could see it in Blade's posture, in the way he stood, like he was always braced for impact. Sam tried a different angle. When you were pulled here, do you think it happened for a reason? Blade's eyes finally lifted. Magic doesn't care about reasons. It cares about price. Sam nodded slowly. Bobby says that too. Blade looked back down. Then listen to him. Sam almost smiled. Almost. Then the radio on the counter crackled. Bobby moved quick, like his body knew danger before his mind did. He turned it up. Static. Then a voice. Tight. Low. Bobby, you there? Bobby's face hardened. Yeah, who's this? A pause. Then, it's Ellen. Dean came back into the room, hair wet, shirt half buttoned. His eyes sharpened when he heard the name. Ellen? Dean said. Roadhouse Ellen? Bobby nodded once, still listening. Ellen's voice came through again. I got hunters in here asking questions. They're talking about a daylight vampire. They're talking about you boys, and they got a smell. Bobby's throat tightened. What kind of smell? Ellen didn't answer right away, like she didn't want to say it out loud. Then she said, Hell. Dean's face went cold. Demons at the roadhouse? Ellen's voice stayed calm, but Sam could hear the steel in it. Not in my building. Not yet. But they're close. Bobby swore under his breath. All right. Lock down. Don't take any deals. You hear me? Ellen snorted. Honey, I don't do deals. Dean looked at Sam. We have to go. Blade spoke before anyone else could. We're being tracked. Bobby stared at him. You smelling that? Blade's eyes flicked to the window. Not smell. Pattern. The Alpha wants me in the open. Demons want me isolated. Hunters want me boxed. Dean's jaw tightened. So everybody wants you. Blade didn't react. That's what happens when people think you're a tool. Sam's voice was tight. We're not letting them take you. Dean looked at Sam like he was warning him without words. Don't promise things you can't keep. Bobby slammed his mug down. All right. We don't go chasing everybody. We pick a target. Sam asked. Who? Bobby pointed to the map. The witch mark. The demon tag. We find who's drawing the doors. Blade nodded. The door is the center. Dean grabbed his jacket. And we keep Ellen alive. Bobby's eyes narrowed. And we keep you boys alive. Dean muttered. Trying our best. They moved. Crowley hated panic. Panic made people sloppy. Sloppy made people predictable. Predictable people were boring. He sat in a quiet room with clean walls and a comfortable chair, using someone else's body like it was a rental car. The man's hands were well kept. The suit fit. The phone on the desk was expensive. Crowley liked that. A demon stood in the corner, shifting from foot to foot, like a child who needed permission to speak. Crowley sighed. Spit it out. The demon said. It's real. Crowley raised an eyebrow. What is? The rumor, the demon said. The daylight vampire hunter. The one that moves too fast. The one that cut through a nest like it was nothing. Crowley leaned back. And the Alpha wants him, the demon said. Bad. Crowley's lips curled into a small smile. Of course he does. The demon swallowed. Also, there's door magic. Crowley's smile grew. Door magic. Witches, the demon said. Human witches. They're drawing circles. They pulled him. Crowley tapped the desk with one finger. Interesting. The demon hurried on. The angels noticed too. Crowley's eyes sharpened. Now that is interesting. He stood and walked to the window, staring out at a city street where humans walked like nothing mattered. Crowley spoke softly, almost amused. A creature not on the record. A weapon with a conscience. A problem for the vampires. A prize for demons. A paperwork headache for angels. The demon nodded like it was scared to breathe. Crowley turned back. Find me the witch who knows the ritual. I want the recipe. The demon hesitated. What about the daywalker? Crowley's smile was polite. We don't chase a blade with our bare hands. We offer a handle. The demon frowned. He won't take deals. Crowley waved a hand. Everyone takes deals. They just like to pretend they don't. He leaned closer, voice soft and sharp. Find me his pain. Find me his hunger. Find me the thing he wants that he won't say out loud. The demon's eyes widened. Yes, sir. Crowley stepped back and straightened the suit like he was going to a party. And don't touch him. If you upset him, you'll be ash. The demon swallowed hard. Understood. Crowley sat again, calm as ever. Outside, the world kept turning. Inside, Crowley started arranging people like pieces on a board. The alpha vampire moved through the tunnel system under the meat plant like it was his house. His coat was torn, his ribs ached. The ache was already fading. He didn't mind the pain. Pain meant something had finally challenged him. He climbed out through a hidden hatch in an old storm drain and stepped into the woods behind the building. The night was cool. The air tasted like smoke from the fire. He inhaled and smiled. He could still smell the daywalker. Faint now? But there. A vampire stepped out from behind a tree, head bowed. Report, the Alpha said. We lost 16, the vampire whispered. The Alpha didn't blink. Good. The vampire flinched. Good? The Alpha's eyes turned cold. Weak ones died. Strong ones learned. The vampire swallowed. He's not like us. The Alpha's smile returned, thin and pleased. I know. He stepped closer until the vampire couldn't breathe. He is the answer to a question we've all asked, the Alpha said softly. What happens when the curse is sharpened into a weapon? The vampire's voice shook. He chose the humans. The Alpha nodded. He did? Then he leaned in like he was sharing a secret. That means he can be steered. The vampire blinked. How? The Alpha's eyes flicked toward the trees, toward the road, toward the whole world. By making him watch people die, the Alpha said. Or by making him afraid, he will be the reason they die. He straightened and turned. Find the witch again, the Alpha ordered. I want another door. The vampire hesitated. Demons are sniffing around. The Alpha's smile grew. Let them sniff. He walked into the dark, calm as a king. Everyone wants him, he said. That means he's the center now. The roadhouse was loud, but not the fun kind of loud. It was the loud of hunters who had too many drinks and too many fears. The music played, but it couldn't cover the tension. Ellen stood behind the bar like she owned the building because she did. Her eyes stayed sharp. Her smile stayed ready. But it wasn't real tonight. Joe hovered nearby, restless, watching the door. Dean walked in first, shoulders tight. Sam followed, scanning faces. Blade came last, hood up, sunglasses on, moving in a way that made people's eyes follow him even if they didn't know why. Ellen's gaze snapped to Dean. You always bring trouble? Dean tried to grin. It didn't land. Hey. Ellen. Joe stepped forward. Who's the guy? Dean opened his mouth. Blade spoke first. Nobody. Joe blinked. That's not an answer. Blade didn't change expression. It's the safest one. Ellen's eyes narrowed. You're not a hunter. Blade didn't deny it. I hunt. Ellen leaned closer, voice low. You got a problem on you. Dean nodded. Yeah. Sam stepped in gently. Ellen, you said demons were close. Ellen's eyes flicked to the corner of the room where two men sat with beers they weren't drinking. They looked normal. That's what made it worse. They came in asking questions, Ellen said. About you two. About a daylight monster. About an alpha. Dean's jaw tightened. They didn't say demon. Ellen's mouth tightened. They didn't have to. I've seen eyes like that. Sam's stomach dropped. They're possessed. Ellen nodded. And I don't like it. Dean looked around, voice tight. Where's Ash? Ellen's eyes hardened. In the back, working. Like always. Dean swallowed. Okay. We need to clear civilians, and Blade's head turned sharply. He heard it. Not words. A shift. A small change in the room, like the air had been cut. The two men in the corner stood at the same time. Their faces didn't change, but their eyes did. Black. Empty. Dean's hand went to his gun. Sam's heart slammed. Blade didn't reach for a gun. He stepped forward like a door closing. One demon man smiled. Well, ain't you pretty? Blade's voice was cold. Leave. The demon laughed. Oh, sweetheart. No. Ellen snatched a shotgun from under the bar. Get out of my bar. The demon turned his head toward her slowly, like he was insulted a human was speaking. Then he looked at Blade again. You're the rumor. Blade didn't move. And you're a parasite. The demon grinned wider. That's cute. Sam spoke, voice tight but clear. If you're here for a deal, we're not interested. The demon chuckled. I'm not here for you, moose. Dean stiffened. Don't call him that. The demon didn't even glance at Dean. I'm here to give the Daywalker a message. Blade's eyes narrowed. From who? The demon's smile turned smug. From someone who appreciates good work. Dean's breath caught. Crowley. Ellen's eyes flashed. Crowley? That name rings a bell. Dean's voice went lower. Crossroads Demon. Big deal maker. The demon nodded like he enjoyed the title. He says hello. Blade didn't care about greetings. Say what you came to say. The demon's eyes gleamed. He says, you're stranded. He says you're hungry. He says you're fighting a war in a world you don't understand. Blade's voice stayed flat. And? The demon leaned closer, like he was whispering something sweet. He says he can show you the door home. Sam's throat tightened. Dean's eyes snapped to Blade. Blade didn't blink. No. The demon frowned like that answer annoyed him. You didn't even hear the price. Blade's voice was quiet and sharp. The price is always people. The demon's smile returned. Smart. Ellen's shotgun raised higher. Last chance. Out. The demon sighed dramatically. Fine. But tell me this, Daywalker. Blade stared at him. The demon's eyes flicked to the crowd, to the hunters watching with tense faces. How many of these people will die because you're here? The demon asked. Sam's stomach twisted. Dean's grip tightened on his gun. Blade's jaw tightened. But his voice didn't shake. None. The demon laughed. Bold. Then the demon snapped his fingers. The lights flickered. A small blast hit the bar like a punch. Bottles shattered. People screamed and ducked. Ellen fired, but the demon man jerked sideways too fast, like something pulled him. Blade launched forward. He grabbed the demon man by the throat and slammed him into a support beam. The wood cracked. The demon's grin stayed on, even as his body hit hard. Blade's grip tightened. Get out. The demon wheezed a laugh. You think you're in charge? Blade's eyes went cold. I know I am. He drove his head forward and smashed the demon's face into the beam again. The vessel's nose broke. Blood ran. The demon hissed, angry now. A shockwave burst from the demon's chest, throwing Blade back 3 steps. Dean fired. Sam threw holy water. The holy water splashed and smoke rose off the demon's skin. The vessel screamed. Ellen shouted, Out! Everybody out! Joe grabbed hunters by the shoulders and shoved them toward the exits. The second demon man moved toward Blade, eyes black and hungry. He raised a hand, and the air in the room tightened like a trap. Blade's muscles pulled against invisible pressure. Dean fired again, but the bullets didn't matter. Sam's hands shook as he grabbed a knife and started chanting under his breath, the exorcism he'd said 100 times before. The demon laughed. You gonna talk me out, kid? Sam kept chanting. Blade felt the pressure lift slightly, as Sam's words hit like hooks. Blade stepped forward, slow at first, then fast. He hit the demon man with a kick that launched him over a table. The demon man slammed into the wall and cracked plaster. Blade crossed the room and grabbed him again. Sam's chanting grew louder. Dean's voice joined in, rough but steady, because Dean had learned the words too. The demon man's laugh turned into a scream. Black smoke poured from his mouth like a living thing trying to escape. The vessel collapsed. The smoke shot toward the ceiling, and Blade moved like a whip. He fired a shot straight into the path of the smoke, not to hurt it, but to force it to veer. It wasn't magic. It was instinct. It was control of space. The smoke snapped toward a window instead and vanished into the night. The bar went quiet except for people breathing hard. Ellen lowered her shotgun slowly. Her eyes were furious. Out, she said to Dean, Sam, and Blade. All of you. Before more show up. Dean spread his hands. Ellen. Ellen's gaze was like a knife. I said out. Sam swallowed. We're sorry. Ellen's face softened for half a second, then hardened again. You can be sorry later. Right now, you need to survive. Dean nodded once, tight. Okay. Blade didn't argue. As they backed out into the parking lot, the night air hit them cold. Dean looked at Blade. Crowley wants you. Blade stared at the roadhouse door. Crowley wants control." Sam's voice was tight. "And the demon said something else. He asked how many people will die because Blade is here." Dean swallowed. "That's the point. That's the move." Blade's voice was low. "He's trying to make me leave." Sam nodded. "Or make you take the deal." Dean's face twisted. "Over my dead body?" Blade looked at him. "Don't promise that." Dean's eyes flashed. "Shut up." Bobby called then. Voice harsh through the phone. "You boys alive?" Dean barked. "Barely." Bobby's voice tightened. "Get out of there, now." Sam asked, "Bobby, what's happening?" Bobby didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was low. "They hit my yard." Dean's blood went cold. "What?" Bobby's breath was heavy. "Not monsters. Not vamps. Hunters?" Sam froze. "Hunters attacked you?" Bobby's voice was bitter. "They wanted the Daywalker. They wanted to solve the problem." Dean's face went red. "Are you okay?" Bobby grunted. "I'm still breathing. But they took something." Sam's voice tightened. "What?" Bobby said. "Your blood cooler." Dean's head snapped to Blade. Blade's face didn't change, but the air around him felt colder. Bobby continued. "And they left a message?" Dean swallowed. "What message?" Bobby's voice was hard. "They said if the Daywalker wants his food back, he can come take it." Sam's stomach dropped. "It's a trap." Dean's jaw clenched. "It's a stupid trap." Blade's voice was flat. "It's also leverage." Sam looked at him. "Blade, don't go alone." Blade's eyes turned to Sam. "I won't." Dean stared. "Wait, really?" Blade looked at Dean. "I said I learn." Dean blinked, thrown off. Bobby's voice cut in. "Listen, this ain't just hunters. I found a witch mark on my fence. Same style as the ones you showed me." Sam's throat tightened. "So the witch network is involved." Dean's face went grim. "And the Alpha?" Blade's eyes narrowed. "And demons?" Bobby sighed, tired and angry. "Which means this thing is bigger now." Dean's voice went low. "So what's next?" Bobby didn't hesitate. "We find the witch, who knows the door. We shut it down. Because if that door stays open, more things will come through." Sam swallowed. "Or get pulled through." Blade's eyes flicked away like the word hit him. Dean's voice softened just a hair. "Yeah," Bobby added. "And we do it careful, because now the whole damn world is looking for you." Blade's voice was calm. "Let them look." Dean exhaled hard. "God, you're impossible." Sam looked between them. "We need a place to regroup." Ellen's voice came from behind them. She stood in the roadhouse doorway, arms crossed. Joe stood beside her. Ellen spoke bluntly. "You can use my back room for 10 minutes, then you're gone." Dean nodded fast. "Thank you." Ellen's eyes flicked to Blade. "You keep those demons away from my bar." Blade's voice was quiet. "I will." Ellen stared at him, then nodded once like she believed him, even if she didn't like it. They went back inside into the back room. It smelled like old beer and cleaning spray. Ash was at a desk covered in wires, eyes wide with excitement and fear. "Dude, you guys just got visited by demons. That was—" Ellen snapped. "Ash." Ash shut up instantly. Sam paced. Dean sat. Blade stood near the door again. Dean finally said what he'd been holding since the plant. "You can't keep picking civilians over the Alpha," Dean said. Blade looked at him. "Yes, I can." Dean's voice rose. "No, you can't. That's what he wants." Blade's eyes stayed cold. "Then what do you want me to do? Let them die to win a fight?" Dean's face twisted. "I want you to survive." Blade stared at him like that was the most honest thing Dean had said all night. Dean realized he said it and looked away, angry at himself. Sam stepped in, quiet, but firm. "Dean, we can't become what we hunt." Dean rubbed his face. I know. Blade's voice was low. Your fear is useful. But if it drives you, you'll make mistakes. Dean snapped. And if your pride drives you, you'll get us all killed. Blade didn't react like he was offended. He reacted like he was thinking. I don't have pride, Blade said. I have purpose. Sam nodded slowly. Okay. Then we use that. Blade, your purpose is stopping monsters. Blade nodded. Sam continued. And our purpose is saving people. That's why we can work together. Dean exhaled hard. Fine. Ash raised a hand slowly. I might have something. Ellen groaned. Ash hurried. No, listen. I've been tracking weird energy spikes. Like, weird. And it matches those circle marks. Sam leaned in. Where? Ash pointed at a map. Here. Abandoned factory outside of Lansing. It's not on the vampire route. It's on the magic route. Blade's eyes sharpened. A hub. Dean stood. We go. Sam nodded. We go. Blade spoke, voice steady. We go together. Outside, thunder rolled far away, even though the sky was clear. It felt like the world was warning them, or watching. They hit the factory before midnight. Dean killed the headlights early and rolled in quiet. The building was huge and dead, with broken windows that looked like missing teeth. Weeds pushed up through cracked asphalt. A chain-link fence sagged like it had given up. Sam checked his bag. Salt. Holy water. Iron. A printed sheet with symbols. A small recorder for chants. Dean checked his gun, then checked it again. Blade didn't check anything. He was already ready. As they moved toward the entrance, Blade's head tilted. Sam watched him. You hear something? Blade's voice was low. Heartbeats. Dean's mouth tightened. How many? Blade paused. 6. Human. Inside. Afraid. Sam's stomach dropped. Hostages. Dean hissed. Of course. Blade's jaw tightened. We move fast. Quiet. Dean nodded. For once, we agree. They slipped in through a side door. Inside, the air was cold and damp. Old machines sat in rows like sleeping giants. The floor was dirty with oil stains and dust. Their footsteps sounded too loud. Blade moved ahead, silent. Dean and Sam followed close. They found the first circle in a wide open room. It wasn't drawn with chalk. It was carved into the concrete. Deep, clean lines, like someone took time. Blood stained the grooves. Sam crouched and studied it, eyes focused. This isn't a quick ritual. This is built. Dean whispered. Built for what? Sam swallowed. For stability, for holding a door open longer. Blade scanned the shadows. Where's the witch? A soft voice answered from behind a pillar. Right here. Dean spun, gun up. A woman stepped into view. Same witch from the church, long coat, tired eyes, hands that looked steady even when she was scared. She raised both hands. Easy, no tricks. Dean's voice was sharp. Yeah, because last time you threatened to kill a kid. Her face tightened. That kid lived. Dean snapped. Because we showed up. The witch's eyes flicked to Blade. And because he's real. Blade's voice stayed flat. Why are you here? She swallowed. Because you brought a storm, and now it's hitting my doorstep too. Sam stepped forward carefully. Are you the one making these circles? She shook her head. Not alone. Dean's eyes narrowed. Who else? The witch hesitated. Blade took one step closer. Not threatening, just certain. Say it, Blade said. The witch's voice came out thin. There's a group, a coven. They sell magic. They don't care who buys. Sam's stomach turned. Occult brokers. Dean muttered. I hate witches. The witch glared at him. I hate hunters. Yet here we are. Blade didn't care about insults. Where are the hostages? The witch's eyes flicked toward a metal door at the far end of the room. Back there, their payment. Dean's jaw tightened. Payment to who? The witch looked at Blade again. To the Alpha. Blade's shoulders went tight. He's here. The witch nodded, small. Not in the building. Nearby. Watching. Waiting. Sam's breath caught. He's letting you do the work, the witch whispered. He wants a door that stays open long enough to pull something else through. Dean's voice was low. Like what? The witch's gaze dropped. I don't know. The demons asked for access. The Alpha asked for a leash. Sam's eyes widened. A leash? The witch nodded once. On you. Blade's jaw clenched. Try. Dean's voice went sharp. What do the demons want? The witch's lips tightened. Control. Same as always. A small sound came from the metal door. A muffled sob. Sam flinched. We have to get them out. Blade was already moving. Dean grabbed Sam's arm. Wait! Trap! Blade paused and looked back at them. Dean's voice was rough. We open that. It triggers something. I can feel it. Blade stared at the door, then at the circle lines that ran toward it like veins. He nodded once. Then we cut the trigger. Sam swallowed. How? Blade's eyes scanned. He saw it. A thin wire, almost invisible, tied to a small charm at the edge of the circle. Blade stepped toward it, careful. The witch sucked in a breath. Don't touch that. Blade sliced the wire with a tiny blade. Fast. The charm dropped and cracked. The air shifted. Nothing exploded. Dean let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Okay. Nice. Blade didn't react. Open the door. Dean moved in and kicked it open. Inside were 6 people in a cramped room, bound with rope, eyes wide with terror. One man had a fresh cut on his palm, like someone had taken blood. Sam rushed in. It's okay. We're here. The people stared at Dean's gun, then at Blade's sunglasses, then at Sam's calm voice. Blade didn't speak to them. He started cutting ropes. Dean hissed to Sam, "Get him out." "Now!" Sam nodded and guided them toward the exit. The witch watched, face tight. "You don't understand what you're stepping into." Dean snapped. "We understand enough." Blade looked at the carved circle again. "This circle isn't for pulling me." The witch's eyes flicked to him. "No." Blade's voice went colder. "It's for pulling something into me." The witch swallowed. "That's what the coven was paid to build." Dean's eyes widened. "Like possession?" Sam from the hall shouted, "Dean, we got movement outside!" Blade's head snapped toward the broken window. He heard it too. Not heartbeats. Too few. Too steady. Vampires. And one of them moved with a calm that made the hair on Dean's arms rise. The Alpha. Blade stepped toward the window. Dean grabbed a Molotov from his bag. "We burn this place!" The witch's eyes widened. "If you burn it while it's active, it could tear the veil." Sam rushed back in, breath fast. "There are vampires outside. A lot." Blade's voice was flat. "How many?" Sam swallowed. "I counted 8. But there are more sounds in the walls. Like tunnels." Dean cursed. "Always tunnels." Blade looked at the witch. "How do we shut it down?" The witch's voice shook. "You need to break the anchor." The anchor is... A crash hit the far end of the building. A metal door ripped off its hinges like someone peeled it away. Vampires poured in, fast and hungry. And in the doorway behind them, the Alpha vampire stepped in like he owned the building. He smiled at Blade. "Hello again," the Alpha said. Dean raised his gun. "Oh, screw you." The Alpha ignored him. His eyes stayed on Blade. "You came." Blade's voice was calm. "You baited with humans." "I came." The Alpha's smile widened. "Yes." Sam's voice was tight. "What do you want?" The Alpha finally looked at Sam, like he was looking at an insect that spoke. "I want what shouldn't exist," the Alpha said. Then he looked back at Blade. "I want to know if you can break." Blade's eyes went cold. "You won't like the answer." The vampires rushed. Blade moved. He didn't waste time with the small ones. He used speed and angles, snapping necks, slicing tendons, firing silver rounds into spines. He moved like a machine that had learned to be kind only when it mattered. Dean and Sam held the line near the circle. Dean threw salt and lit it, making a bright barrier. Vampires hit it and hissed, skin smoking where the salt burned their feet. Sam splashed holy water on one vampire's face. It screamed and fell back, clawing at its own skin. The witch backed toward the wall, hands shaking, whispering words under her breath like she was building a shield. The Alpha walked forward through the chaos like it was light rain. He stepped over the bodies of his own people without looking down. Blade met him head-on. Their first clash hit like a hammer. Blade drove his shoulder into the Alpha's chest and pushed him backward. The Alpha twisted mid-step and raked claws across Blade's arm. Blade didn't slow. The cut closed as they fought. Dean watched, breath caught. It was insane. Blade was faster. The Alpha was smarter. The Alpha kept angling toward the circle. Blade kept blocking him. Sam shouted, "The anchor!" The witch yelled back, voice sharp with fear. "The anchor is blood! The blood in the grooves!" Dean blinked. "So what, we clean it?" The witch screamed. "No! You burn it out!" Dean looked at Sam. "Fire?" Sam nodded fast. "Fire." Dean grabbed the Molotov. Blade heard the glass slosh. "Not while I'm on it!" Dean shouted. "Then get off it!" Blade slammed the Alpha into a machine and held him there with one hand. The Alpha snarled, then smiled, even pinned. "You're trying to protect a circle." Blade's voice was cold. "I'm trying to stop you." The Alpha's eyes gleamed. "Same thing." He jerked his head. Two vampires grabbed the witch from behind. She screamed and kicked, but they held her tight. Sam shouted, "Hey!" The Alpha smiled wider. "Break the circle, and she dies." Dean's mouth fell open in shock. "Are you kidding me?" Blade's eyes narrowed. "You don't care about her." The Alpha shrugged. "I care about control." Blade's grip tightened on the Alpha's throat. The Alpha smiled like he liked it. "Choose again, Daywalker." Dean's face went white-hot with anger. "I swear to God." Sam's voice shook. "Blade." Blade didn't look at them. He stared at the Alpha. Then he spoke low, like a vow. "You don't get to make me choose." He moved so fast Dean barely saw it. Blade released the Alpha for half a second, shot past him, and crossed the space to the vampires holding the witch. He sliced one's arm clean off, then kicked the other through a table. The witch stumbled free, gasping. Blade grabbed her coat and shoved her behind him. "Run." She didn't run. She stared at him, shocked. Blade snapped. "Move!" She moved. Dean threw the Molotov. The bottle arced through the air and smashed on the circle. Flames burst across the carved grooves, bright and violent. The blood in the lines boiled and smoked. The air in the room screamed. Not like a person, like the world itself was being torn. Sam's eyes widened. "Dean!" The circle lit up. A flat, cold glow. The same kind of glow Blade remembered from the motel. A hole opened above the circle. Not a doorway you could walk through like a hallway. A rip in space. A tear. Wind howled out of it. But it didn't smell like this world. Blade's breath caught. For 1 second, he smelled his own world. Concrete. Chemicals. City rain. And something else. A memory of a face. A vampire's smile that was too confident. Blade's fingers curled. The Alpha saw Blade's reaction and laughed. "There it is," Dean shouted. "What the hell is that?" Sam's voice was tight with fear. "That's a door, a real one." The witch screamed, "It's not stable." The tear widened. Something flickered inside it. Not clear. Not fully formed. But Blade saw enough to feel his chest tighten. A hallway. A lab table. A symbol he recognized from his own hunts. This wasn't random. This was connected. Blade took one step toward the tear without thinking. Dean grabbed his arm. "Blade!" Blade's eyes stayed locked on the rip. "That's my world." Sam's voice shook. "It's calling you." The Alpha stepped closer, eyes bright. "Go on! Touch it!" Blade's jaw tightened. He could feel it pulling. Not as hard as before, but steady, like a hook in his ribs again. Then the Alpha moved. He lunged not at Blade's throat, at Dean. Blade reacted on instinct. He shoved Dean back and took the Alpha's claws across his side instead. The pain was sharp. Blade didn't scream. He slammed his elbow into the Alpha's jaw and knocked him back. Dean stared at Blade's torn coat and the blood that was already slowing. "You took that for me." Blade's voice was flat. "Don't read into it." Sam shouted, "The tear is getting bigger." The witch yelled, "It's going to collapse or it's going to swallow us." Dean looked at the circle. "We need to shut it." Sam's mind raced. "Salt. Symbols. Maybe." Blade stared at the tear. If he ran into it, he might get home. If he ran into it, this whole building might collapse and kill everyone. Blade's jaw clenched. He turned away from the tear. Again. He looked at Sam. "How do we close it?" Sam swallowed. "We need a seal. Like a barrier. Like an angel ward." The witch shouted, "I can't do angel wards." The Alpha laughed, delighted. "You hear that? You need angels." Dean's face twisted. "Oh, great. Love that." And then the air shifted again. Not from the tear, from above. A pressure filled the room, heavy and quiet. Like the world suddenly remembered a rule. The vampires flinched. Sam's eyes widened. "Oh no," Dean whispered. "Angel." A man appeared near the circle like he stepped out of thin air. Trench coat. Tie. Dark hair. Blank stare that looked like it didn't belong in a human face. Castiel. He looked at the tear, then at Blade, then at the Alpha vampire. His voice was flat. "This is not permitted," Dean snapped. "Where have you been?" Castiel didn't look at Dean. "This anomaly has drawn attention." Blade's eyes narrowed. "You." Castiel's gaze settled on Blade like a scanner locking onto a target. "You do not belong to this world." Blade's voice was cold. "No kidding." Castiel stepped closer to the tear. His hand lifted. The air around his fingers hummed. The Alpha snarled. "Angel." Castiel didn't react. "You are contaminating the veil." The Alpha smiled, even now. "I'm improving it." Castiel's eyes didn't change. "You are breaking it." Dean barked. "Yeah, well, fix it." Castiel placed his palm near the tear without touching it. Light flared under his hand. The rip shuddered like it hated him. The wind slowed. The glow dimmed. Sam whispered, "He's sealing it." Blade watched, chest tight. He felt the pull weaken. He felt the door to his world sliding away. His jaw clenched. Castiel turned his head slightly, like he sensed Blade's reaction. "You desire return." Blade didn't deny it. "I desire this to stop." Castiel stared at him. "Your soul is unusual," Dean snapped. "Can we not do the soul talk right now?" Castiel finally looked at Dean, calm. "You should not be here." Dean scoffed. "Tell that to my life." Castiel returned his focus to the tear. The light under his hand brightened. The rip shrank. The world stopped screaming. Then, with a sudden snap, the tear folded shut like a wound closing. The room went still. The only sound was fire crackling on the circle and people breathing. Blade stood very still. He didn't look angry. He looked like he had swallowed a stone. The alpha vampire laughed softly. "You closed his door." Castiel turned toward the alpha, eyes cold. "I prevented a breach." The alpha's smile widened. "You also made him stay." Castiel didn't react. "He will stay until this is resolved." Blade's voice was low. "You don't decide that." Castiel looked at him. "Your presence is destabilizing." Blade stepped forward one pace. "My presence is not the problem. Your enemies are using magic like a weapon." Castiel's eyes narrowed slightly, the closest thing he had to emotion. "They are." Dean pointed at the alpha. "He's right there. Do something." Castiel looked at the alpha like he was looking at a stain. "I could end you." The alpha's smile didn't move. "Then why don't you?" Castiel paused. Dean blinked. "Wait, why don't you?" Castiel's voice was flat. "I am not here to solve your war. I am here to stop a tear in the veil." Dean's face twisted with anger. "So you'll just let him go?" Castiel looked at Dean like Dean was speaking another language. "Free will." Dean barked a bitter laugh. "Oh, I hate that phrase." The alpha stepped backward, calm, enjoying every second of their frustration. Blade shifted to chase him. Castiel's hand lifted slightly, not threatening, but firm. "Do not." Blade's eyes snapped to Castiel. "Move!" Castiel didn't move. Dean stepped between them fast. Okay, everybody calm down." The alpha's laughter echoed once more as he backed into the shadows near a side corridor. "Thank you for the show," the alpha said. "I learned a lot." Blade lunged anyway. But the alpha was already gone, slipping into tunnels again like smoke into cracks. Dean shouted, "Not again!" Sam's face fell. "He keeps escaping." Blade's jaw clenched. "He won't forever." Castiel stared at the tunnel entrance, then back at Blade. "You are being hunted." Blade's voice was flat. "I know." Castiel's eyes stayed on him. "Demons seek to use you." Blade's gaze narrowed. "I know." Castiel said, "And hunters seek to destroy you." Dean bristled. "Hey." Blade didn't even look at Dean. "I know." Castiel paused. Then he said something that made Sam's stomach drop. "The veil remembers you," Castiel said. "If you are pulled again, the next breach may not close." Blade's eyes hardened. "Then I stopped the pulling." Castiel nodded once, almost approving. "Good." He looked at Dean and Sam. "You will try to protect him." Dean scoffed. "Try?" Castiel didn't react. "Your efforts may fail." Dean opened his mouth, furious. Castiel vanished before Dean could finish the sentence. The room felt emptier the second he left, like the air got lighter but also colder. Sam exhaled hard. "Well, that happened." Dean stared at the burned circle. "Angels show up, say a few creepy things, and leave us holding the bag." Blade looked at the circle too. Then he looked at the witch, who stood near the wall, shaking, soot on her hands. "You said a coven built this," Blade said. The witch nodded, voice small. "Yes." Dean stepped closer, gun still up. "Where are they?" The witch swallowed. "They move. They don't stay in one place. They use safe houses." Sam asked, "But you know how to find them?" The witch hesitated. Blade's voice was quiet. "If you don't help, the Alpha will kill you. Demons will use you. Hunters will blame you." The witch's eyes flashed. "I know." Blade held her gaze. "So choose." For a long moment, she looked like she might spit in his face. Then she exhaled, defeated. "There's a broker. He runs meats. He's human, but he sells to anyone. If you find him, you find the coven." Dean's jaw tightened. "Name?" The witch whispered. Silas. Sam repeated it. Silas. Blade nodded once. Where? The witch looked away. Detroit. Old rail yard. Tomorrow night. Dean muttered. Of course it's Detroit. Sam's voice was tight. We have to go. Blade turned toward the exit. We go. Dean grabbed his arm again, but this time it wasn't to stop him from charging. It was to keep him close. Dean's voice was rough. We do it smart. Blade looked at him. Yes. Dean blinked, still not used to hearing agreement from him. As they left the factory, Sam glanced back at the burned circle. He felt like the world had just opened its eye, and it was staring at them now. Detroit's rail yard was a maze of rust and shadows. Metal tracks ran like scars across the ground. Old train cars sat abandoned, doors hanging open like mouths. Streetlights flickered. Distant traffic hummed like a living thing that didn't care about the monsters hiding nearby. Dean parked 2 blocks away. Sam checked the time. We're early. Blade stared at the yard. Good. Dean glanced at Blade's torn coat again. How's the scratch? Blade didn't look down. Gone. Dean muttered. Must be nice. Blade's voice was flat. It's not. Sam watched them both and felt the tension sitting between them like a third person. They moved in slow. Blade went first, senses wide open. He could hear heartbeats inside train cars. He could smell fear and sweat. He could smell blood too, but not fresh. Stored. Dean and Sam stayed close, weapons ready. Dean's hands were steady. Sam's breath was controlled. Both were scared, but neither was running. They found the meat at the center of the yard, a circle of people around a folding table under a hanging lamp. Not a ritual circle, a business circle. A man stood at the table wearing a clean coat and a smug smile. He looked human. His heartbeat was normal, but his eyes were too confident. That had to be Silas. On one side of the table stood a woman with a bag of herbs and bones. A witch. On the other stood a man in a suit who smiled too easily. Demon. You could feel it. And behind them, in the shadows, vampires waited. Not a swarm, a guard line. Dean whispered, It's a market. Sam's voice was tight. And we're the product. Blade's jaw clenched. No. They stepped out. The lamplight hit Blade's hood and sunglasses. It made him look like a ghost. Silas's smile faltered for the first time. Oh. The demon in the suit smiled wider, delighted. There he is. The witch's eyes widened with fear. The vampires in the back shifted, hungry. Dean raised his gun. Party's over. Silas swallowed. Hunters. Sam stepped forward, voice controlled. Silas. You're going to tell us who's drawing doors. Silas tried to laugh. It came out thin. I don't know what you mean. Blade walked forward like he didn't care about the guns. Lie again. Silas's eyes snapped to Blade. You're not. Blade's voice was cold. Finish that sentence. Silas's throat bobbed. He didn't finish. The demon in the suit clapped slowly. Wow. Intimidating. Dean snapped. Shut up. The demon grinned. You know, I was hoping Crowley would come himself. Sam's eyes narrowed. Crowley sent you. The demon shrugged. He's busy. Blade's voice was flat. Tell Crowley to stop sending messages through meat suits. The demon laughed. Oh, I like you. Dean's finger tightened on the trigger. I don't. The demon's smile didn't move. Silas, be a good boy. Tell them what they want. Silas's eyes darted, trapped. I, the witch hissed. Don't! Silas flinched. Blade stepped closer, now close enough that Silas could smell him. Blade's voice was quiet. You drew blood to pull me. You sold it. You helped build the circle. Silas's lips trembled. I didn't know it would work. Blade's eyes narrowed. But you hoped. Silas swallowed hard. The coven. They said there was a key. They said if we got the right blood. Dean's stomach dropped. Right blood. Sam's voice went low. Blade's blood. Blade's jaw tightened. The demon in the suit leaned in, delighted. See? Told you. Product. Dean took one step forward. You touch him and... The demon laughed. And what? You'll shoot me? Please. I'm a cloud with attitude. Sam spoke fast. Silas, where's the coven? Silas's eyes were wide. They meet in places like this. They move. They use an old clinic. Dean blinked. Clinic? Silas nodded quickly, desperate. Yes, a closed clinic. South side. They use the basement. It has old wards in the walls. Sam's mind latched on. That could stabilize a ritual. Blade's voice was cold. Address. Silas stammered it out. Dean's jaw tightened. Okay, we go now. The witch at the table moved her hand slightly. Blade saw it. A charm dropped from her fingers and hit the ground. The air snapped tight. A line of invisible force whipped out like a rope and wrapped around Sam's ankle. Sam yelped and fell hard. Dean shouted, Sam! Blade moved. He crossed the space and sliced the force line with his blade like it was a real rope. It snapped free. Sam scrambled back, breathing fast. The witch hissed, eyes wild. He can cut it! The demon laughed louder. Oh, that's useful? The vampires surged. Dean fired and dropped one with a dead man's blood round to the chest. Sam threw holy water. It hit a vampire's face and made it scream and recoil. Blade stepped into them like a wall hitting a wave. He moved fast and clean. He used silver. He used steel. He used his own strength like a hammer. Vampires fell back, bodies hitting gravel and metal. But this time, some of them didn't recoil from the UV flash as hard. They wore crude shields, like the Alpha had started building. Blade noticed. He adapted. He went for joints, eyes, throats, places armor didn't cover. Silas screamed and tried to run. Dean grabbed him by the collar. You're not going anywhere. Silas cried, I told you. Dean growled. You told us late. The demon in the suit stepped back, smiling, hands raised like he wasn't part of this. Fun, very fun, Sam shouted. Dean, don't kill Silas. Dean snapped. He sold people. Sam yelled. We need him alive to find the clinic. Blade didn't speak. He just kept moving, keeping vampires off them. Then the ground under the table trembled. A new circle flared to life. Not carved, painted. Quick. The witch screamed a word. The air tore. Not as big as the factory tear. A smaller rip. A doorway just wide enough for one thing. Black smoke poured out, thick and angry. A demon exit. The demon in the suit grinned. That's my cue. Dean shouted, No! Blade lunged, but the demon smoke slipped past him like oil. It shot into the rip and vanished. The rip snapped shut. The witch bolted too, slipping into shadows, protected by two vampires who threw themselves at Blade to buy her seconds. Blade ended them and turned. Too late. She was gone. Dean cursed so loud it echoed off the train cars. Sam breathed hard, eyes wide. They can open doors that fast. Blade's voice was cold. Not stable doors. Emergency doors. Dean yanked Silas forward. You, move! Now! Silas sobbed. Please! Dean shoved him toward the car. You can plead later. Blade followed, silent, eyes scanning the yard for the Alpha. He didn't smell him. That almost felt worse, because it meant the Alpha didn't need to show up to win. He could let others do the work. The old clinic sat like a bruise in the city. Boarded windows, a cracked sign, graffiti on the walls, a chain on the front doors that didn't mean anything to the kind of people who came here at night. Dean taped a flashlight to his shotgun like he didn't trust the dark. Sam checked the address again. This is it. Silas nodded frantically, hands tied. This is it. I swear. Blade didn't speak. He just moved to the door and ripped the chain apart with a hard pull. Dean stared. Okay. Remind me never to arm wrestle you. Blade didn't react. They went in. The air inside smelled like mold and old medicine. Blade's senses picked up blood again. Stored. Cold. Dean's skin crawled. I hate this, Sam whispered. Basement will be the ritual room. Blade nodded. Basement. They found the stairs. Halfway down, Sam stopped. Wait, Sam whispered. Dean froze. What? Sam's voice was tight. There are wards here. Dean squinted at the wall. Those scratches? Sam nodded. They're old. Like, really old. Like someone built this place to keep things in. Blade ran his hand near the wall without touching. He felt a faint pressure. Like a humming fence. Angel work? Blade asked. Sam swallowed. Maybe. Or something similar. Dean muttered. Great. So we're in a haunted hospital with magic walls. They reached the bottom. The basement was wide, filled with old beds and broken cabinets. A row of flickering candles sat on a table, like someone was trying to make it pretty. And in the center, there it was. A new circle. Bigger than the train yard one. Cleaner than the factory one. It was carved and painted and fed. Blood filled its grooves. Dean's stomach dropped. Oh no. Sam's voice was thin. It's active. Silas whimpered behind them. I told you. I told you. Blade stepped forward, eyes locked on the circle. There was a chair in the center, and strapped to it was a person. Not a civilian from the street. A hunter. Blade recognized the smell of gun oil and salt and fear. The hunter's eyes were wide, mouth gagged. Dean's face went cold. That's one of ours, Sam whispered. They're sending a message. The candles flared. A group stepped out from behind the old cabinets. Witches, 4 of them, different ages, different faces, same cold eyes, and one vampire guard line behind them, standing too still. The lead witch smiled. Welcome. Dean raised his gun. Yeah, no, let him go. The witch's gaze slid to Blade. We didn't expect you to come in person. Blade's voice was flat. You expected to bait me. The witch nodded. Yes. Sam stepped forward, voice controlled. You're going to stop the ritual. The witch laughed softly. No. Dean's voice rose. If you don't, I'll... The witch cut him off with a flick of her hand. Dean's gun flew out of his hands and slammed into the wall. Dean stared, furious. Okay. Witch. Sam raised his hands with holy water and a knife. We can still fight. The witch's eyes flicked to Sam. You can try. Blade stepped forward, calm as death. Who paid you? The witch smiled. Everyone. Blade's jaw tightened. Demons and the Alpha. The witch's smile widened. Yes. Sam's voice shook. What is the ritual for? The lead witch tilted her head. To bind a door to a body. Dean's breath caught. To... What? The witch's gaze locked on Blade. To make you a walking doorway. Silas sobbed. I told them it was crazy, Dean snapped. Shut up! Blade stood still. Inside, something old and angry tightened in his chest. He had been hunted by vampires his whole life, but this was different. This was someone trying to turn him into a tool that could break worlds. Blade's voice was low. You'll fail. The witch smiled like she enjoyed his confidence. Maybe. But the attempt will teach us. And teach our buyers, Sam whispered. Blade. They're going to take your blood. Blade's eyes stayed on the circle. Let them try. The witches started chanting. The circle lit up. The air in the basement tightened, and the hum in the walls grew louder, like the building itself was waking up. The hunter in the chair screamed behind the gag, body jerking as the circle's glow crawled up the straps like heat. Dean lunged forward. A vampire moved to block him. Blade crossed the space in a blur and hit the vampire so hard it flew into a cabinet and snapped it apart. Dean stared at Blade for half a second, then ran for the chair. Sam followed, chanting an exorcism under his breath, not because it would stop witches, but because it kept his mind steady. Blade moved straight for the lead witch. He didn't waste time with threats. He grabbed her by the throat. Her eyes widened. She tried to speak a word. Blade punched her in the mouth. Her spell broke. The circle flickered. The other witches screamed and raised their hands. Invisible force slammed into Blade from both sides. Blade's body slid back across the floor, boots scraping concrete. Dean shouted, "Blade!" Blade's jaw clenched. He pushed against it. Hard. His muscles bulged. His shoulders shook. The force wasn't strength. It was pressure. But Blade had fought pressure his whole life. Pain, hunger, rage. He knew how to move through it. He surged forward anyway. Sam reached the chair and started cutting straps. The hunter's eyes were wild, tears running down his face. Dean ripped the gag off. "Hey, hey, you're okay!" The hunter gasped, choking. They want," Sam said. "We know." Dean snapped at Sam. "Less talking, more cutting!" Sam cut faster. The witches screamed again. The circle flared. A thin line of light shot up from it and snapped toward Blade's chest like a spear. Blade twisted at the last second, but it still grazed him. Pain hit like ice. Blade grunted. He felt something tug inside him, like the ritual was trying to grab his bones again. He stepped back, breathing hard for the first time. The lead witch laughed, blood on her lips. "It works!" Blade's eyes went colder. Not enough. He reached into his coat and pulled out a UV grenade. He threw it. The flash filled the basement with hard white light. The vampires hissed and recoiled, shielding their faces. The witches flinched too, blinking, thrown off. Dean and Sam used the moment to pull the hunter out of the chair and drag him back. Blade rushed the witches again. He moved like a blade through the dark, cutting down vampire guards when they stepped in, then returning to the witches before they could reset. He hit one witch with the flat of his sword, knocking her out cold. Another witch tried to draw a symbol in the air with her finger. Blade shot her hand. She screamed. The lead witch stumbled back toward the circle, eyes wild. "Stop him!" she screamed at the vampires. The vampires surged again, forced forward like dogs. Blade didn't slow. Dean shouted, "Blade, the circle!" Sam looked up, panic rising. "If they bind it to him—" Blade understood. He turned his attention to the circle itself. Dean grabbed a bottle of gasoline from his bag, hands shaking. "Fire?" Sam's voice was tight. "The ward's in the walls. If we burn it, it could rip the building." Blade's gaze flicked to the humming walls. "Then we break the wards first." Sam blinked. "How?" Blade pointed at the carved marks along the stairs and walls. "Those are anchors. Cut them." Dean stared. "With what?" "A butter knife." Blade threw him a small blade. "With that." Dean caught it and stared at it like it was the most serious gift he'd ever received. Sam rushed to the nearest wall and started scraping, carving, breaking the lines. Dean did the same, teeth clenched. The hum in the wall stuttered, like a machine choking. The lead witch saw what they were doing and screamed. "No!" She ran toward Sam. Blade intercepted her. He slammed her into the ground so hard the concrete cracked under her shoulder. Blade didn't kill her. He pinned her, eyes hard. "Stop!" Her eyes were wild. "You don't get to order us!" Blade's voice was like steel. "I do!" He twisted her arm until she screamed. "Stop the ritual," Blade said. She laughed through pain. Even if I stop, the circle is fed. It wants a door. Dean shouted from the wall. Anchors are almost gone. Sam panted. One more. The hum in the walls died. The air pressure eased, just a little. Blade looked at Dean. Now. Dean threw the gasoline onto the circle. The lead witch screamed. Dean lit it. Flames rushed across the blood grooves. The circle flared, angry. A tear tried to form above it, but without the warlords, it shook like it couldn't hold. The witches screamed and tried to chant again. But Blade moved through them like a storm. He knocked one out. He disarmed another. He dragged the lead witch away from the circle as it burned. Sam grabbed Silas by the collar. Move! Silas sobbed and stumbled up the stairs. Dean and Sam pulled the injured hunter with them. Blade went last, holding the lead witch like she weighed nothing. As they reached the stairs, the basement behind them groaned. The air cracked. For a split second, Blade saw the edge of another world flicker inside the flames. A hallway again. Cold lights. A lab table. Then it snapped away. The building shook. Dean yelled, "Go!" They burst out into the night as the clinic's windows blew out with a loud crack. The walls didn't collapse, but the air above the clinic shimmered like heat, even though it was cold outside. Sam stared, breathing hard. We almost, Dean finished, broke the world. Blade set the lead witch down on the ground and pinned her with his boot. She coughed, blood on her chin, eyes bright with hate. Dean aimed his gun at her head. Tell me why I shouldn't end you. Sam grabbed Dean's arm. Dean! Dean's voice shook. She almost turned him into a door. Sam's voice cracked. I know, but if we kill her, we lose answers. Blade looked down at the witch. Who hired you? The witch laughed, wheezing. Everyone. Blade's eyes narrowed. Name the demon. The witch's smile twisted. Crowley. Dean's face went hard. Knew it! Blade's voice stayed flat. Name the vampire. The witch coughed again, then whispered, the Alpha. Blade held her gaze. What did he want exactly? The witch's eyes gleamed. A leash. A way to drag you where he wants. A way to make you bring the sun into his house. Dean's stomach turned. He wants to use you to wipe out rivals. Sam whispered, he wants to reshape the vampire world. Blade's jaw clenched. He won't. The witch laughed again, weaker now. He already started. A sound came from above them, a soft flutter, like fabric in a still night. Dean's head snapped up. No, not again. Castiel stood on the sidewalk near the clinic, like he had been there the whole time. Sam's breath caught. Cass, Dean barked. Oh, now you show up. Castiel's eyes stayed on the clinic. You prevented a full breach. Dean scoffed. Yeah, by almost dying. Castiel looked at Blade. You felt it. Blade didn't deny it. Yes. Castiel stepped closer, gaze focused. The veil recognizes your signature. Each tier will become easier. Sam whispered. So this will keep happening. Castiel nodded. Unless the mechanism is destroyed. Dean snapped. So help us destroy it. Castiel's face didn't change. I cannot act freely. Dean's anger flared. Free will again. Castiel paused, like the phrase meant something painful. Yes. Blade's voice was low. Then why are you here? Castiel looked at him. Because you are not a demon. You are not entirely a monster. And yet, you are dangerous. Blade's eyes narrowed. You want to judge me. Castiel's voice stayed flat. I want to understand you. Dean muttered. Good luck. Castiel's gaze slid to the witch pinned under Blade's boot. She must not continue. Dean snapped. Oh, now you want to kill people. Castiel looked at Dean, calm. She is a risk. Sam spoke quickly. Cass, we need her alive to find the Alpha and Crowley's chain. Castiel's eyes stayed on Sam. You believe she will cooperate? Sam swallowed. We can make her. Blade's voice was colder. I can. The witch spat blood and laughed. Try. Castiel watched Blade for a long moment. Then he said, I will mark her. Dean blinked. Mark her? Castiel knelt, placed 2 fingers on the witch's forehead, and whispered a word that made the air tighten. A small symbol flared on her skin, then vanished. The witch's laughter stopped. Her eyes widened in fear. What did you do? Castiel stood. If she uses door magic again, I will know. Dean stared, annoyed and impressed at the same time. That would have been nice earlier. Castiel didn't react. Earlier, I was observing. Dean threw his hands up. Of course you were. Castiel's gaze returned to Blade. Your presence is altering many decisions. Blade's voice was flat. Good. Maybe it will force people to stop hiding. Castiel paused. Or it will force them to become worse. Blade's eyes stayed hard. Then I cut them down. Castiel looked at him, almost like a question. Then he vanished again. The night felt normal for 1 second after he left. Then sirens sounded in the distance. Dean swore. We gotta move. Sam nodded, breath still fast. We got the witch. We got Silas. We got a hunter who needs a hospital. Dean looked at Blade. And we got you. Blade's voice was quiet. You have me. Dean blinked again, thrown off by how steady it sounded. Blade turned his head toward the dark streets. His senses stretched. He smelled something faint. Not the Alpha, not demons, something else. A watcher. A hunter nearby who was not part of their team. Blade's jaw clenched. The world was closing in, and he could feel the next fight coming before it started. 2 weeks later, Bobby's kitchen had a new rule written in marker on a scrap of cardboard. No rituals in the house. Dean had added a second line under it. And no ketchup jokes at the table. Bobby had circled it and written, Try me. Blade stood at the sink, washing blood bags like they were regular dishes. He did it with the same calm focus he used to clean a blade. The cooler sat open on the counter. Inside, the ice packs were stacked like bricks. Dean leaned on the doorway with his arms crossed, watching like this was the strangest thing he'd ever seen. You know, Dean said, most people don't rinse evidence like it's Tupperware. Blade didn't look up. It's not evidence, Dean huffed. It's a blood cooler in Bobby's kitchen. That's evidence of my suffering. Bobby grunted from his chair. He had a book open, but he wasn't reading. He was listening to the world through old instincts. If you keep complaining, I'll make you carry it. Dean pointed at Blade. He can carry it with one hand. Blade set a bag down and finally looked at Dean. You're the one who cares about it. You carry it. Dean opened his mouth, then shut it. His eyes flicked to Sam like he wanted backup. Sam didn't look up from his laptop. He's right. Dean's shoulders slumped. I hate you both. Sam finally lifted his eyes. He looked tired. Not sleepy tired. War tired. We got 3 more missing person hits. Same pattern, same route. But smaller now. Bobby's eyebrows rose. Smaller? Sam nodded. The Alpha's still moving, but he's cautious, like he's reorganizing. Blade's jaw tightened. He had been out every night since the clinic. Not for fun. Not for pride. Because the dark didn't wait. He'd run rooftops in small towns. He'd checked nests. He'd followed whispers of door marks. He'd found 2 vampires wearing crude UV shields and taken them down before they could tell anyone what they were learning. And every time he saw a human in the wrong place at the wrong time, he'd made the same choice. Save first. Kill second. Dean had stopped arguing about that out loud, but it still lived in his eyes. Bobby turned a page. The coven? Sam's face tightened. Quiet. Too quiet. The marked witch hasn't tried door magic since Cass tagged her. Dean snorted. Yeah, because she's scared of angel spyware. Blade finished washing and wiped his hands. He moved like he didn't waste motion. Fear makes people sloppy. Bobby pointed at him. Or it makes them careful. Blade's voice stayed flat. Then we make them move. Sam glanced at the door, where Silas sat on a chair, hands zip-tied, eyes darting like a trapped mouse. He'd been helping for 2 weeks now, mostly because Dean reminded him every day that he didn't deserve comfort. Silas swallowed. I've been telling you, they won't meet if they think it's a trap. Dean walked over and crouched right in front of him. Everything is a trap, Silas. Silas's lip trembled. That's not fair. Dean smiled without humor. Welcome to hunting. Blade stepped close enough that Silas's heart sped up. They'll meet if they think they can win. Silas looked between them. Who would be dumb enough to? Blade's eyes didn't blink. Me. Silas went pale. Sam looked up sharply. No. Blade's gaze stayed on Sam. Yes. Dean straightened fast. Absolutely not. We are not using you as bait. Blade's voice was calm. They're already using me as bait. They just do it with civilians. Dean's jaw clenched. Bobby exhaled like his lungs were full of gravel. He's not wrong. Dean shot Bobby a look. Bobby. Bobby held up a hand. I didn't say I liked it. I said it's true. Sam pushed his laptop aside and stood. His voice was steady, but his eyes were tight. If we do this, we do it on our terms. No civilians, no open crowd, no roadhouse, no cities. Blade nodded once. Agreed. Dean looked at Sam like he was betrayed. Sam. Sam cut him off. Soft, but firm. Dean, we need a clean fight. We need a controlled battlefield. If we keep reacting, we keep losing ground. Dean stared at the table, breathing hard. Then he looked at Blade. You don't get to die, Dean said. Blade's face didn't change. I don't plan to. Dean shook his head like he hated that answer, because it sounded like a promise he couldn't check. Bobby tapped the book. There's another problem. Sam's stomach sank. What? Bobby slid a page forward. It had symbols on it. Not Latin, not English. Old, sharp lines. Castiel left that, Bobby said. He showed up while you were out last night. Dean groaned. He broke into your house? Bobby glared. Angels don't knock. Sam leaned in. Enochian. Bobby nodded. He said it's a seal, not strong enough to trap an angel. But strong enough to keep a demon from slipping out as smoke if you draw it right. Dean blinked. So, we can stop them from running. Sam's eyes sharpened. If we can hold them long enough to exercise. Blade listened, focused. Good. Dean rubbed his hands over his face. Okay, so we build a cage. Bobby's gaze moved to Blade. And you don't go alone. Blade didn't argue. I won't. Sam looked at Silas. You're going to set the meat. Silas's voice cracked. They'll kill me. Dean leaned down again, smile cold. They might, but if you don't help, I'll make sure you wish they did. Sam winced, but he didn't stop him. Not this time. Blade's voice was quieter. We'll keep you alive if you do what we say. Silas stared at Blade, trembling. Why? Blade looked at him like the question was simple. Because you're still breathing. That means you can still choose. Silas's eyes filled. He nodded fast. Okay, I'll do it. Dean stood and pointed a finger at Blade. Also, one more rule. Blade waited. Dean's mouth tightened. You drink before the meat. I'm not doing the whole angry but not stupid thing while demons are around. Blade gave the smallest nod. Bobby grunted. Dean's right. And I hate that sentence. Dean smirked. Write it on the cardboard. Crowley didn't call. He didn't have to. He showed up in a man's body at a crossroads outside a dead cornfield, standing under a flickering street lamp like he was waiting for a ride. The suit was too nice for the dirt. The shoes were clean. The smile was easy. Blade watched from the shadows across the road. He could hear Crowley's heartbeat. It was normal. Human. But the eyes were wrong. Old and amused and sharp. Dean sat in the Impala with the engine off, watching through the windshield like he was holding his breath. Sam stood beside the car, hands in his pockets, trying to look calm. Crowley clapped once. "Lovely. The whole little family." Dean stepped out, gun in hand. "Back up." Crowley chuckled. "Oh, relax. If I wanted you dead, you'd already be dead. I'm here to talk." Sam's voice was controlled. "We don't do deals." Crowley raised his hands like he was wounded. "Everyone keeps saying that. It's almost adorable." Blade stepped into the light. Crowley's smile widened, like he'd been waiting for that exact moment. "There you are." Dean's head snapped toward Blade. "Blade!" Blade didn't stop. He stood a few feet from Crowley, still as stone. Crowley's eyes flicked over him like he was reading a file. "Eric Brooks." Dean's mouth opened. "Wait, what?" Sam's eyes widened. "That's your name?" Blade didn't look at either of them. His eyes stayed on Crowley. "Don't say it again." Crowley grinned. "Oh, I'm sorry. Was that private?" Dean stared at Blade like the world had just shifted. "You never told us." Blade's voice stayed flat. "You never needed it." Crowley sighed dramatically. "Touching. But names are useful, you know. Helps with research. Helps with leverage." Blade stepped closer by half a step. "Say what you want." Crowley's smile sharpened. "Fine. Straight to it." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small cooler. A clean one. New. With a neat label. Dean's face twisted. "Oh, come on." Crowley set it on the ground like a gift. "Stable supply. No theft. No messy hospital break-ins." "You're welcome." Dean pointed his gun at Crowley's chest. "We're not taking blood from a demon." Crowley tilted his head. "Not from me. From my network. I have resources." Sam's voice tightened. "What's the price?" Crowley's grin returned. "A simple job." Blade didn't move. "No." Crowley blinked, fake offended. "You didn't even ask what the job was." Blade's eyes didn't change. "It involves hurting people." Crowley leaned in slightly, voice silk smooth. "It involves hurting my enemies. Your enemies. Vampires. Witches. Little monsters who don't know their place." Dean swallowed. Sam's jaw tightened. Crowley spread his hands. "Look, Eric, Blade. Whatever. You're stranded. The Alpha wants to wear you like a crown. Hunters want to put you down like a dog. Angels want to watch you like a problem." Crowley smiled wider. "I can fix that." Blade's voice was cold. "You can't fix anything. You only trade." Crowley's eyes gleamed. Yes, that's how power works. He took a step closer, careful, like he respected Blade's speed. "I can show you a door home, a real one, not a messy tear that collapses, a controlled exit." Sam's breath caught. Dean's hand tightened on the gun. Blade stared at Crowley for a long moment. Then Blade spoke, slow and clear. "If you can open a door, you can open more." Crowley smiled. "Exactly." Blade's eyes hardened. "That makes you the problem." Crowley's smile flickered for the first time, like irritation slipped through. "No, that makes me the solution." Blade stepped closer. "I don't take solutions that come with chains." Crowley sighed. "You're stubborn." Blade's voice stayed flat. "I'm disciplined," Dean blurted, unable to help himself. "Also, he hates you." Crowley's eyes slid to Dean. "Of course he does. So do you. Yet you still use my enemy's tricks every day." Dean's face went red. "Shut up." Sam stepped forward, voice tight but steady. "We're ending the coven. We're ending the door magic. You can either stay out of it or get burned by it." Crowley's smile returned. "Oh, sweetheart, I don't get burned. I do the burning." Blade leaned in just enough that Crowley's vessel took a tiny step back. Blade's voice dropped. "Tell your demon messengers to stop coming near hunters. Stop touching civilians. Stop touching my blood." Crowley's eyes gleamed. "Or what?" Blade's answer was simple. "Or I start hunting you." The cornfield went very quiet. Dean felt his stomach drop. Sam's eyes widened. Crowley stared at Blade for a long moment. Then he laughed. Not because it was funny, because he liked the threat. "I like you," Crowley said softly. "I hate that I like you." Blade didn't blink. Crowley's smile sharpened again. "Fine, no deal. For now." He tapped the cooler with his shoe. "Keep it. Consider it. Goodwill." Dean snapped. "We're not keeping it." Crowley shrugged. "Throw it away then. Wasteful." He looked back at Blade. "But listen, the Alpha is not just building an army anymore. He's building a story." Blade's eyes narrowed. "What story?" Crowley's voice turned lighter, like gossip. "The story where the daylight monster becomes their king, or their executioner." Sam's throat tightened. "He's trying to control the vampire world." Crowley nodded. "Bingo." He stepped backward into the dark. "Oh, and Eric, if you ever change your mind." Crowley smiled like a knife. "I'll be right here." Deals don't expire. They just get more expensive. Then his eyes went black for a split second, and he vanished, leaving the street lamp buzzing and the cooler sitting there like a dare. Dean stared at it like it might bite him. Sam whispered, "He knows your name." Blade's face stayed hard. "So do you now." Dean looked at Blade, still stuck on it. "Eric." Blade didn't answer. Dean exhaled hard. "Okay, that's weird." Blade's voice was quiet. "Names don't change the job." Sam nodded slowly. "No, but it changes trust." Blade looked at Sam. "Trust is earned." Dean pointed at the cooler. "And demon blood coolers are rejected." He kicked it into the ditch. Blade didn't stop him. But later, when Dean wasn't looking, Bobby would pull it out and check it for traps anyway. Because Bobby was Bobby. The meet was set for midnight at a half-collapsed warehouse near the river. Silas did his part. He sent the message through the right channels. The kind of channel that didn't go through phones. The kind that went through fear and greed. The bait was simple. Blade would be there, and the marked witch would be there too, ready to work. Sam didn't like using her. Dean liked it even less. Blade didn't like it at all. But Blade understood war. You didn't win by wishing the enemy was kinder. They moved in teams. Dean laid traps outside first. Salt lines hidden under loose gravel. Dead man's blood painted under rusted rails. Gas cans placed where they'd funnel movement, not where they looked cool. Sam set the seal inside. The Enochian marks from Castiel's page were drawn in a wide circle around the main floor. Not flashy, just precise. Sam's hands shook at first, then they steadied. He spoke the words under his breath like a promise. Blade watched the room, mapping angles. High rafters, 2 stairwells, 1 wide bay door, 1 side exit. Bobby sat in a truck a block away with a rifle, grumbling into a radio. "I swear, if this ends with my yard on fire again," Dean answered. "No promises." Blade's voice came low through the mic. Quiet. The marked witch stood near the center of the warehouse, hands tied behind her back, a strip of duct tape across her mouth until it was time. Her eyes were furious. Dean kept a gun on her like it was a hobby. "You so much as blink wrong," Dean whispered. I'm gonna enjoy this. Sam shot Dean a look. We need her functional, Dean muttered. I hate that sentence too. Blade stood in the shadows near a support pillar. Coat closed. Sword ready. Gun loaded. No extra motion. The warehouse smelled like river water and metal and old blood. Then Blade heard it. Footsteps. Many. Not human heartbeats. Too cold. Too steady. Vampires. Dean's skin prickled as the temperature dropped. Sam's breath caught. They're here. The bay door rolled up with a loud scrape. Vampires stepped in. Controlled. Not rushing. They moved like they'd trained. Behind them walked the alpha vampire. He didn't smile like a hungry animal tonight. He smiled like a leader. And beside him, in a human body with a lazy grin, walked a demon in a suit. Not Crowley. An agent. A messenger with too much confidence. The demon looked around and chuckled. Ooh, nice place. Very dramatic. Dean muttered, Shut up. The alpha's eyes locked on Blade's shadowed corner, like he could see through darkness by instinct. His smile widened. Daywalker, the alpha said. Blade stepped into the open. The vampires around the alpha tensed. Some looked afraid. Some looked excited. The alpha's eyes gleamed. You came. Blade's voice was cold. You're done. The alpha laughed softly. No, we're beginning. The demon spread his hands. Let's all calm down. We're here to... Sam's voice cut in, clear and firm. You're standing inside a seal. The demon blinked. Then he laughed. A seal? He tried to step back. His foot hit the edge of the Enochian circle. The air flashed, invisible but real. The demon stumbled like he hit a wall. His smile faltered. Dean's grin appeared for the first time all night. Oh my God, it works! The demon's eyes went black. You little... Sam raised his voice. Stay in the circle. The demon snarled and tried to bolt again. The seal shoved him back like the room itself refused to let him leave. Dean lifted his shotgun. No smoke exit for you, buddy. The alpha's gaze snapped to the markings on the floor. His smile faded just a little. Angels, the alpha said, like it was a bad taste. Blade's eyes didn't move. Not angels. Hunters who learn. The alpha's gaze flicked to Dean and Sam. You think these scratches protect you? Dean barked. Better than your coat. The alpha's eyes narrowed. Then he snapped his fingers. The vampires surged. They didn't rush like animals. They moved like a unit. 2 went high toward the rafters. 4 went low to flank. 2 aimed straight for Sam. Blade moved. He crossed the floor in a blur and hit the first flanker so hard it spun and crashed into a support beam. Blade turned and fired 2 silver rounds into another vampire's legs, dropping it. He pivoted and threw a UV grenade toward the rafters. White light exploded above. The vampires up high screamed and fell back, claws scraping metal. Dean fired into the low group, forcing them to hit his dead man's bloodline. 2 vampires recoiled like they hit a hot fence. Dean shouted, Dead man's blood! Come on! Sam stayed behind the seal line, hand steady now, chanting the exorcism in a clear voice, aiming it at the trapped demon. The demon laughed through clenched teeth. Oh, this is cute. Sam didn't stop. The alpha stepped forward slowly, ignoring the chaos. He walked straight toward Blade. Blade met him. Their collision sounded like a car crash. Blade drove a punch into the alpha's ribs. The alpha twisted, absorbing it. Then raked claws across Blade's shoulder again, trying to tear through to muscle. Blade didn't slow. He grabbed the alpha's wrist and twisted hard, using leverage and strength together. Bone cracked. The alpha didn't scream. He smiled. You heal, the alpha said. You don't tire. You don't burn in the sun. He leaned in, voice low. You were made for my world. Blade's eyes went ice cold. I was made to end monsters. The alpha's grin widened. Then end me. Blade tried. He drove the Alpha backward toward Dean's trap lane. The Alpha planted his feet, strong enough to stop the push. Then he shifted his weight and used Blade's momentum to spin them both, trying to angle Blade toward the center of the seal, toward the demon. Blade felt it. He adjusted. He broke the spin, stepped in tight, and smashed his forehead into the Alpha's nose. The Alpha's head snapped back. Blade followed with a knee to the Alpha's gut. The Alpha staggered 2 steps for the first time. Dean saw it and shouted, "Now!" Dean tossed a line of dead man's blood across the floor between Blade and the Alpha, splitting their space. The Alpha hit it and flinched, skin sizzling at his boots. His smile vanished for a second. Blade didn't waste that second. He launched forward and slammed his sword into the Alpha's shoulder, pinning him to a metal support post. The blade stuck deep. The Alpha snarled, furious now. He grabbed the sword with one hand and tried to pull it out. Blade held it there, muscles locked. Dean stared, stunned. "Holy!" Sam's chanting rose, pulling at the demon like hooks. The demon's smile cracked. Black smoke started seeping from his mouth. He screamed, the human vessel shaking. "Stop!" the demon snarled. "Stop! Stop! Stop!" Sam didn't stop. Dean grabbed holy water and splashed it across the demon's chest. Smoke hissed. The demon shrieked. "Crowley!" the demon screamed, voice breaking. "Crowley!" The Alpha's eyes flicked toward the demon, annoyed. He didn't like sharing the stage. Blade saw the Alpha's distraction. He leaned in close to the Alpha's ear. "This is what you wanted. A leash?" The Alpha's eyes narrowed. Blade spoke one more line, simple and brutal. "Here's your leash." Blade pulled a silver chain from his coat. Bobby's idea, old and ugly, soaked in dead man's blood and blessed water. Blade looped it around the Alpha's throat in one fast motion. The Alpha's hands flew up, clawing at it. His body jerked like it was fighting a poison collar. Dean's eyes widened. Bobby's silver chain actually did something. Bobby's voice crackled through the radio, smug. "I know what I'm doing." Blade yanked the chain tight and dragged the Alpha across the dead man's bloodline, forcing him into a trapped lane. The Alpha snarled, fighting like a beast now, strength surging. Blade's boots dug into the concrete. He held. Sam's exorcism hit the demon like a wave. The demon's eyes rolled back. Black smoke burst out of the vessel's mouth in a hard stream, trying to escape. It hit the seal line. The Enochian marks flared. The smoke slammed back like it hit glass. The demon screamed, trapped in its own exit. Dean shouted, wild with triumph. "Yes!" Blade didn't look away from the Alpha. The Alpha's eyes locked on Blade's face. Not fear, not surrender. A promise. "You can't kill what I started," the Alpha hissed. Blade's voice was cold. "Watch me." Blade raised his gun and aimed at the Alpha's head. Dean's breath caught. Sam's chanting faltered for half a second. Then something changed. A thin mark flared on the restrained witch's forehead. Castiel's mark. The witch's eyes went wide. "Wait!" she tried to shout through the tape. The air above the warehouse trembled. A small tear tried to form, triggered by her panic, her magic rising on reflex. Not a full door. A hiccup. But it was enough. Every vampire in the room turned their head. The Alpha's eyes flashed. The demon's smoke surged again, desperate. Blade felt the pull in his ribs like a hook yanking tight. Dean shouted, "No! Not again!" Sam's voice shook, but he forced the words out. He changed the chant, switching from exorcism to the seal phrase he'd practiced with Bobby. "Hold!" Sam said through clenched teeth. "Hold!" The Enochian marks flared brighter. The tour shuddered, unstable. And then Castiel appeared. Not with thunder, with pressure. He stood near the tear, expression blank, eyes fixed. The witch's mark burned and she screamed behind the tape. Castiel looked at Blade for 1 second. His voice was flat. "You are being used as a hinge." Blade's jaw clenched. "I know." Castiel placed his hand near the tear. Light flared. The tear snapped shut like a lid slamming down. The pull in Blade's ribs eased again, leaving behind a hollow ache. The demon smoke slammed against the seal one last time. Then it tore free from the vessel and collapsed into itself like it was being sucked through a straw. Sam's final words landed like a hammer. The smoke shrieked and vanished, forced out, exorcised, gone. The vessel collapsed, coughing, alive. Dean stared, panting. "We did it!" Castiel turned toward the Alpha. The Alpha strained against Blade's chain, still fighting, still furious. Castiel's voice stayed calm. "You will stop creating breaches." The Alpha smiled, even choking. "You don't rule me." Castiel looked at him like he was looking at something small. "I don't need to rule you," Dean shouted. "Kill him!" Castiel didn't react. Blade didn't react either. Blade understood something in that moment. Castiel could kill the Alpha, but he wouldn't, because it wasn't his role. And Blade could kill the Alpha. But if he did it here, right now, the vampire world might fracture into chaos. More nests, more random feeding, more dead civilians. Killing the king wasn't always the end of war. Sometimes, it was the start of a worse one. Blade tightened the chain and forced the Alpha down onto one knee. Then Blade leaned close, voice low so only the Alpha could hear. "You want a king story?" Blade said. "Here's mine." He slammed the Alpha's head into the concrete once, not to kill, to mark him, to humble him. Then Blade pulled the sword from the Alpha's shoulder and stepped back, keeping the chain tight. Dean's eyes went wide. "Blade, finish it!" Blade's voice stayed flat. "No!" Dean's face twisted with anger. "What do you mean, no?" Blade looked at Dean. "He wants me to become him." Dean froze. Sam's breath caught, understanding. Blade's voice was quiet. "I don't." The Alpha coughed a laugh, blood at his lips. "Mercy." Blade's eyes were cold. Not mercy, strategy. Blade jerked the chain and dragged the Alpha toward the bay door. The vampires that were still standing hesitated. Their leader was on his knees, choked by a daylight hunter. They didn't rush Blade. They didn't want to die. The Alpha's eyes burned with hate, but also something else now. Respect. Blade shoved the Alpha out into the night. He released the chain and stepped back. "Go," Blade said. Dean shouted. "You're letting him go again!" Blade didn't look back. "I'm sending a message." The Alpha rose slowly, rubbing his throat. He stared at Blade, eyes bright. "This isn't over," the Alpha said. Blade's answer was simple. "Good." The Alpha backed into the dark. His remaining vampires followed him, dragging the wounded, carrying the fear with them. Castiel watched them leave. Then he looked at Blade again. "The breaches will continue unless the mechanism is destroyed," Castiel said. Blade nodded once. "Then it will be destroyed." Castiel's gaze slid to Sam. "You did well." Sam blinked, surprised. "Thanks." Castiel looked at Dean. "You did not die." Dean stared. "That's your compliment?" Castiel didn't change expression. "Yes." Dean threw his hands up. "Unbelievable." Castiel's eyes returned to Blade. "Crowley will adapt." Blade's jaw tightened. "So will I." Castiel vanished. The warehouse went quiet except for breathing and distant river sounds. Sam lowered his hands slowly. His arms trembled from holding the seal. Dean stared at Blade like he wanted to yell and hug him at the same time. Instead, Dean pointed at the floor. "We got the witch. We got the Coven's notes?" Sam nodded, already moving. "Yeah. Burn them. All of them." Bobby's voice came through the radio. "Burn everything that looks like a circle. I mean it." Dean muttered. For once, I agree with Bobby. Blade walked over to the marked witch and ripped the tape off her mouth. She coughed and spat. "You idiots!" Dean snapped. "You almost tore reality open." She glared. "You think you stopped it? You slowed it. Crowley still has people. The Alpha still has blood. There are more hands on the rope now." Blade stared at her. "Then you tell me every hand." She laughed, but it was weak. "You can't hunt them all." Blade's voice was calm. "Watch me." Sam stepped in, tired but steady. "You're going to help us. Because if you don't, the next time that mark burns, an angel will show up. And I don't think he'll mark you twice." The witch's eyes flicked with fear. Dean leaned in, voice low. "Welcome to consequences." They took her. They took Silas. They took the burned pages and ashes and anything that looked like a ritual anchor. They left the warehouse empty and cold. And for the first time since Blade landed in this world, the night felt quieter. Not safe. Just quieter. A week later, the missing person report slowed again. Not stopped. Slowed. That mattered. Bobby's living room looked like a command center now. Maps, pins, notes. And on the fridge, the cardboard sign had new writing. No doors. Dean had drawn a little stick figure vampire under it and crossed it out. Blade sat at the table with his sword in pieces, cleaning it like it was a ritual he trusted. Dean sat across from him, cleaning his gun. Sam sat with a thick stack of printed notes, eyes red from reading too long. Bobby stood at the stove, stirring something that smelled like chili. Dean stared at it and whispered, "Is that normal chili or is it vampire chili?" Bobby didn't turn. "Keep talking, and it becomes chili you eat outside." Dean held up his hands. Okay. Sam finally spoke, quiet. "The Coven's network is fractured. The witch gave us 2 more names. We hit one safe house yesterday. Empty. But they left supplies behind." Dean nodded. "They're running." Blade didn't look up from the sword. "Good." Dean frowned. "How is that good?" Blade's voice stayed flat. "Running means they're scared." Sam looked at Blade. "Crowley?" Blade paused, then slid the sword piece back into place. "He'll come again." Dean's jaw tightened. "Let him." Sam hesitated. "And the Alpha?" Blade's eyes didn't change. "He's licking wounds. He'll rebuild. He always does." Dean exhaled hard. "So what's the plan now?" "We keep doing this forever?" Blade didn't answer right away. He thought about the tear in the clinic, the pull in his ribs, the hallway in his world flickering like a ghost. He thought about the people in cages at the meat plant. He thought about Dean's shout when the Alpha almost killed him. He thought about Sam's hands shaking as he drew the seal, and then steadying anyway. Blade finally spoke, slow and clear. "I stay until the door threat is dead." Dean stared. "You're staying?" Blade looked at him. "Yes." Sam's chest loosened with relief he didn't want to admit too loudly. "That's good." Dean's eyes stayed locked on Blade. "What about home?" Blade's jaw tightened. "Home doesn't matter if I leave a mess behind." Dean swallowed. "You're not going to take Crowley's deal." Blade's voice went colder. "Never." Bobby set bowls on the table with a loud clink. "Good, because I don't want demon deals in my kitchen." Dean pointed at the bowl. "Is there ketchup in this?" Bobby glared. "Eat." Dean ate. Blade didn't eat, but he sat with them anyway. That was new. Sam looked at Blade's hands as he reassembled the sword. "You know, you don't have to do every patrol alone." Blade's eyes flicked to Sam. "You're human." Sam held his gaze. "So are they." Blade didn't argue. Dean leaned back and crossed his arms. "Plus, if you go alone, you'll steal all the fun. And by fun, I mean trauma." Blade's mouth moved, almost a smile, then stopped. Dean pointed at him like he caught something. Was that a smile? Blade's voice was flat. No. Dean grinned. It was. Bobby muttered, "You two are idiots." But his tone wasn't as sharp as it used to be. Later, when the dishes were done and the house was quiet, Blade stood on the porch. The night air was cold and clean. The sky was dark. No glowing tears. No humming circles. Just stars. Dean came out and leaned on the railing beside him. For a minute, neither spoke. Then Dean said, "Lo, you know I still have a plan, right?" Blade didn't look at him. "To kill me," Dean swallowed. "To stop you. If you ever lose it." Blade nodded once. "Good." Dean blinked. "Good." Blade's voice stayed calm. "That means you're honest. That means you're ready." Dean's throat tightened. He looked away fast. "Don't make this weird." Blade's head tilted slightly. "It's already weird." Dean snorted despite himself. Inside the house, Sam's laptop clicked softly as he typed. He was making a new map, new pins, new patterns. Bobby's phone buzzed once with a message from a hunter contact. Rumors shifting, fear shifting. The legend of the daylight hunter spreading. Somewhere far away, Crowley smiled at a report and started building a new offer. Somewhere deeper in the dark, the alpha vampire held his throat and stared at the sun through a crack in a boarded window, planning how to take it. Blade breathed in the night air. He didn't feel at peace, but he felt something close to purpose that wasn't lonely. He looked down the road, where shadows waited like they always did. Then he stepped off the porch. Dean watched him go, then called out, "Hey!" Blade stopped. Dean's voice was rough, but steady. "Try not to get stabbed in the ribs again." Blade didn't turn. "Try not to stand in front of claws." Dean scoffed. "Fair." Blade walked into the night. Not as a stranger anymore, not as a weapon owned by anyone, just a hunter. And in this world, that was enough to change everything.